Chapter 737. In the eyes of others, Jiang Tian's attitude was lukewarm and indifferent. But to Shan, it was no different from a muffled clap of thunder ringing in his ears. Moreover, an extremely horrifying scene appeared before his eyes. On an ancient battlefield where corpses were piled up like mountains and blood flowed like rivers, Jiang Tian stood proudly with a height of 300 meters. His feet were stepping on piles of white bones, and his pair of eyes were like two divine lamps. His cold gaze was 100 meters long, sweeping through the myriad of worlds and overlooking all living things. Around him, huge demon heads were sent flying, evil dragons with their guts pierced through fell to the ground, and distant stars exploded like fireworks. Shaoan suddenly felt a sharp, baleful aura forcefully cut open his sturdy heart. All kinds of violent, tragic, savage, and terrifying emotions were forcibly poured into his heart, causing it to suddenly stop beating and making it difficult for him to breathe. At this moment, Shan was scared out of his wits. His hair stood on end, and cold sweat poured out of his body. He couldn't help but tremble, and his divine soul almost shattered. Thump, 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 thump. Shan took 5 or 6 steps back and staggered to the ground. He screamed, "Who are you? Let me go." "Shan, what's wrong with you?" Several young brothers came forward to support Shan with strange expressions. Shan was not only good at fighting, but also extremely daring. He once went alone to the primeval forest of the Siberian plateau to hunt brown bears and dire wolves. He didn't bring any supplies and survived for 3 months, even gaining a few pounds. But now he was so scared that he lost his composure. "Humph, behave yourself or I'll kill you." Jiang Tian's indifferent and cold voice was only heard by Shan alone. As the voice sounded, the fantasy before Shan's eyes disappeared and he returned to reality. "It's nothing." Shan waved his hands at his companions. His face was pale as he looked at Jiang Tian with lingering fear. Then he rushed into the M-26 transport plane and didn't dare to say another word. The young masters of the prestigious families looked at each other, baffled. Then, they clustered around Amphia and boarded the helicopter. The old servant behind Amphia, Connolly, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. He leaned forward and whispered into Amphia's ear. "Maybe he's using Wuxia's illusion technique." Shaoan, who has werewolf blood, was so scared that he almost cried. "Is this the reason why he's so confident in ignoring my pursuit? The journey to the island of death this time is long. I will have the chance to test your background." On the other hand, Princess Amphia was sitting in the cabin, sipping her hot coffee as she looked at Jiang Tian, who was sitting far away from them, with a trace of embarrassment in her eyes. Everyone boarded the plane one after another. Other than Amphia, Shan, and the other corporate scions, they also brought along more than 10 supporting members. Jiang Tian noticed that they were not ordinary soldiers. Many of them even had werewolf blood or were Caucasian shamans or priests. They all had a certain level of magical power. It was just that they were wearing modern combat uniforms, which made people mistakenly think that they were ordinary soldiers. A large wooden box in the cabin was filled with a large amount of firearms. There were heavy machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers, and even laser weapons that conventional troops would not be equipped with. After the helicopter took off and flew for a while, the atmosphere in the cabin gradually became lively. Shaoan seemed to think that the illusion that appeared when he looked into Jiang Tian's eyes was a hallucination that happened when he drank too much last night, and his mind relaxed. However, he did not dare to harass Jiang Tian again. This was not their first time exploring the Northern Isles, and they began to share the fun of exploring the Northern Isles. Aurora, polar bears, thick-billed sea crows, warm wooden houses, and mellow vodka. At first, their conversation was unable to attract Jiang Tian's attention. It was all about the fun of the trip. But suddenly, one of the young masters excitedly slapped his thigh and laughed. "We always get the most out of the sword's grave. Last time, I picked up an antique jade pendant and gave it to my grandfather. My grandfather originally had cancer, but he recovered in 3 months. It was simply amazing." The sword's grave, according to Chinese, was naturally the sword tomb. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this group of people also went to the Northern Isles for the sword tomb? No wonder Amphia had repeatedly emphasized that this expedition was very dangerous. That was the place where the immortals had fallen. Of course, there would be some formations and restrictions. If ordinary people approached, wouldn't they die miserably? Yes. Do you still remember the short sword I picked up last time? It could easily cut through Kevlar bulletproof vests. I asked Wuxia's antique experts to appraise it. They said that it was a sword from the Warring States period, and was worth at least 5 million euros. Another young master said with a smile of exultation. I picked up a helmet. Another young master also began to show off excitedly. We must go to the sword's grave. And Fia frowned. But everyone must be very careful there. After all, we have experienced a risk. 8 bodyguards have died. At the mention of this, everyone's expression changed. The atmosphere was solemn, and there was some fear in their eyes. That's right. What is that thing? It looked like a black gas, but it could swallow a living person. One of the young masters swallowed his saliva and said, I think it was an aurora. It floated around and changed rapidly. Another young master interrupted. It's not an aurora. There has never been a black aurora. Another young master shook his head and said with a fearful expression. Besides, there has never been an aurora swallowing a living person. I've consulted a few meteorologists in my family's company. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid. At this moment, Connolly smiled and said, This time we have made ample preparations and are equipped with a large number of firearms. He said confidently. Besides, our team members are also extraordinary. They are all from my powerful family. Yes, Mr. Connolly is very powerful. I once saw him break a cannonball with one punch, but he himself was unharmed. And Fia also looked at this old servant who had guarded her for more than 10 years with admiration. And Fia was not very clear about Connolly's identity, but even her father was very respectful to him, saying that he was of noble status and had an extraordinary background. Connolly only stayed by Fia's side because he was indebted to her family. Otherwise, he would not have been able to afford to hire her. Mr. Connolly is actually so powerful. With Connolly and the support team, our trip will be very safe. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Connolly in awe before they began to flatter him. At this moment, Jiang Tian suddenly said indifferently, Mr. Connolly, don't go to the sword tomb. Mr. Connolly, it's best that you don't go to the sword catacomb. It's very dangerous there, more dangerous than any previous adventure. You also know about the sword tomb? Connolly's expression was strange, and he immediately became vigilant. He originally thought that Jiang Tian did not know anything about it, but his cultivation was strong, so he brought along Jiang Tian. If there was any danger, he could use Jiang Tian as a meat shield to facilitate his escape. But he did not expect that Jiang Tian actually knew about the sword tomb. Then, it was very likely that Jiang Tian would fight for the treasures that originally belonged to them. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and did not comment. He had only met Fia and the others by chance, and his impression of them was only so. Mr. Jiang, you advised us not to go to the sword tomb. What about you? Connolly's eyes were sharp as he probed. Of course I'm going. Jiang Tian said indifferently. It's best if you send me to the sword tomb and leave on your own. Otherwise you will die an unnatural death. Jiang Tian said this for a reason, and it was also out of goodwill. The sword tomb opened once every 11 years. In their previous explorations, the restrictions had not been opened. To put it bluntly, they had only circled around the sword tomb. Now that the restrictions were opened, many formless killing formations would also be activated, and it would be 10 times more dangerous than before. One had to know that cultivators were always proud and arrogant. They even looked down on the world with disdain. They regarded life as nothing more than grass and used all living beings as chess pieces. The inheritances that they left behind were not to be passed down lightly, and only those who are virtuous and talented. They would set up very dangerous restrictions and formations. Only the powerful cultivators who could break the restrictions could obtain the inheritances and inheritances. Ordinary people would be courting death if they went there. Connolly smiled coldly when he heard that. Mr. Jiang, I know you're quite capable, but you're underestimating us too much. You are just a transcendent state cultivator, or even an internal force cultivator. You don't have the experience of exploring the sword catacomb and know nothing about it. Who gave you the courage to say such things? Do you think that you can do it if we can't? That's right, I think so. If you go, you will only be cannon fodder. Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Mr. Jiang, you are so funny. Connolly was already a little annoyed. How do you know that I am a Caucasian shaman? How do you know that I am powerful and extraordinary? However, he couldn't expose his identity as a shaman. He didn't mention it, but said disdainfully, Mr. Jiang, are you trying to scare us away so that you can enjoy the treasures of the sword tomb alone? You are so cunning and selfish. You should know that we are the ones who took you to Severnaya Zemlya. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to touch the door of the sword tomb. You can say that we are your benefactors. But now you actually… you've really disappointed me. Jiang Tian shook his head and closed his eyes without saying a word. Some people were always full of themselves and took other people's kindness for granted. Some people were so arrogant that they only realized their insignificance and weakness after suffering a loss. Seeing that Jiang Tian didn't speak, Xiaowen thought that Connolly could intimidate Jiang Tian. Mr. Jiang, you didn't even bring the necessary equipment for an adventure. If we don't let you share our fire seed and food, I am afraid that you will starve to death in less than 3 days. When the time comes, you'll be crying. The other young masters were also very unhappy with Jiang Tian and echoed, All right, let's stop talking. Since we are going together, we are friends, or even comrades. I hope that everyone can work together and help each other. Seeing Jiang Tian's cold eyes, Amphia hurriedly tried to persuade him. But in fact, she also despised Jiang Tian a little at this time. Although Amphia was dissolute and had a messy private life, she had one good point. She was hot-blooded, righteous and forthright. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to become the spiritual leader of so many Russian young masters and organize such a dangerous adventure. What she hated the most were those who were petty, selfish, and didn't have team spirit. At this time, Amphia had clearly regarded Jiang Tian as such a person. She was very disappointed and despised Jiang Tian. She almost scolded Jiang Tian as shameless. Chapter 738. After this conversation, Jiang Tian's relationship with Amphia's group was even worse. In the end, the two sides didn't communicate at all. Amphia's group drank vodka, ate cheese, smoked cigars and talked cheerfully. They ignored Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian was also happy to have some peace and quiet. But where did Zhang Qianlei go? Jiang Tian frowned and thought to himself. Along the way, he tried to contact Zhang Qianlei with the satellite phone several times, but he didn't get a response. This made Jiang Tian worried that Zhang Qianlei might be in danger. Guys, we've arrived at Severnaya Zemlya. Let's fly directly to the silent island where the graveyard of swords is located. After the helicopter flew for a few hours, the bearded pilot shouted, We're finally here. The graveyard of swords, we're here. Treasures. There are countless treasures waiting for us. Everyone looked out through the porthole. Their eyes filled with excitement and anticipation as they rubbed their palms. Guys, the snow is too thick. We don't know the actual terrain under the snow, so we can't land on the ground. We might fall into the snow and become specimens. The bearded pilot shouted at the top of his voice. So guys, you can only parachute. But I don't think this will be a challenge for the brave warriors, right? Of course. Sean excitedly took out parachutes and distributed them. He said nonchalantly, We all love extreme sports and have experience in parachuting. He gave one to everyone, except for Jiang Tian. Finally, he looked at Jiang Tian and smiled. Sorry, we don't have enough parachutes. You'd better return with them, or just jump. He opened the hatch with a click. A gust of cold wind mixed with snowflakes poured in, making everyone's breathing stagnate. Xiaowen's voice was full of mockery and ridicule. After all, the snow here is very thick. It's like a cushion. You shouldn't be hurt. In fact, there were plenty of parachutes in the cabin. However, Sean deliberately made things difficult for Jiang Tian. Either Jiang Tian had no choice but to return, so there would be one less competitor. Either Jiang Tian would recklessly jump down, and that would only be a dead end. Right now, the helicopter was at least a few hundred meters above the ground. Even with the ice and snow as a buffer, There was no chance of survival if he jumped down. Shaoan, don't joke about this. Amphia wanted to stop him but was stopped by Connolly. Mr. Jiang is a true hero and brave man. This small challenge is no problem at all. Connolly was also extremely unhappy with Jiang Tian. At this moment, he wanted to checkmate Jiang Tian. He believed that Jiang Tian would not give up the opportunity to explore the sword tomb, but he did not dare to jump down directly. In that case, he could only beg them for mercy. This way, he could take the opportunity to humiliate Jiang Tian. Mr. Jiang, are you still not going to jump? I've heard that Wuxia's cultivators are very powerful. They shouldn't be afraid. At this time, Shaoan actually took out his pistol and waved it. The threat was clear as day. It was as if he would kill him if he didn't jump. Yes. Everyone goodbye. Unexpectedly, Jiang Tian's expression did not change at all. He stepped into the air and jumped down from the cabin door. Ah, it's over. Amphia's expression changed drastically as she screamed. She did not expect Jiang Tian to jump down without a care for his life. Everyone was also dumbfounded. Oh no, he's dead. He actually jumped down. It's at least 600 meters above sea level. Someone whispered. It's 1,000 meters. The pilot said dryly. Slap. Amphia slapped Shaoan and said angrily. You're trying to murder him. Shaoan covered his face and explained. I didn't force him. He jumped on his own. Is it my fault? It's okay. This is no man's land. No one will care about the life and death of a Chinese. Connolly sneered. Miss Amphia, this Mr. Zhang's background is unknown. He might become our competitor. It's best if he dies. Amphia had mixed feelings. As a former member of the KGB and the eldest daughter of her family, she was not a kind person. Whether it was for the interests of the country or her family's business interests, she had killed more people than she could count with two hands. But at this moment, she still felt a little uncomfortable. After all, she had a good impression of Jiang Tian. But it was too late to say anything now. Amphia quickly put Jiang Tian to the back of her mind and parachuted down with everyone, landing on Silent Island. This island, looking from the south to the north, looked like a long and narrow shoe. It was about 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. It was not small and covered in ice and snow. Originally, it had a Russian name. But since a few years ago someone had discovered many ruins here, and found a piece of land with the words Sword Tomb carved on it. This place was called Silent Island, or Sword Tomb Island. 10 minutes later, parachutes floated down, and Amphia and the others landed on the ground. At this moment, they were at the heel position. Because the North Pole had heavy snowstorms in winter, it was not safe for the helicopter to fly further north. And the sword tomb should be at the heel position. It was still about 40 to 50 kilometers north of them, so they still needed to trek for a while. After everyone landed, they used satellite phones to contact each other. 7 or 8 young masters and a dozen guards landed safely. Fuck. At this moment, Sean cursed over the walkie-talkie. My food fell into the sea. In order to safely parachute down, their weapons and food were placed in 2 large boxes and landed with parachutes. After the food landed, everyone carried a bag. But the wind here was too strong, and it was not suitable for parachuting. They had landed safely with hundreds of parachuting experience, but they did not expect their food to be blown into the sea. Now they only had a small amount of food on them, which could last about 3 days. If we reduce our food intake, it will be enough. Amphia thought for a moment and said in a low voice. Everyone gathered together and headed towards the north. The Sword Tomb Island was a barren land. There was thick snow and ice everywhere, and the snow could reach up to their knees when they stepped on it. Moreover, even monkey-beaked seabirds and polar bears were rare here. It would be difficult for them to even hunt some game. There was already a polar night here, and there was no distinction between day and night. They had trekked for 5 or 6 hours, and had only traveled about 10 kilometers. Other than Connolly, who was still okay, everyone was so hungry that their chests were sticking to their stomachs. They were so tired that they were panting. At this moment, they suddenly smelled a tempting meat fragrance. Sean sniffed and drooled. Someone's barbecuing meat. I'm dying. Yes. Someone's barbecuing meat. Find him. Everyone was very excited. After searching for a while, they finally saw a scene that made them dumbfounded. They saw Jiang Tian sitting cross-legged on a patch of snow with a grill in front of him. He was happily roasting a plump hare. The hare was sprinkled with cumin, salt and honey. It had already been roasted to a golden brown color. The aroma permeated the air, and the charcoal fire was red. Hot oil sizzled out, creating small flames on the charcoal fire. It was very tempting. Jiang Tian, you're not dead. And Fia was overjoyed. What's his cultivation level? He's not dead. Connolly's face showed a hint of suspicion and wariness. Tank and the other guards also looked serious. Jiang, your cooking is really good. Can you lend us half of it? Sean ran forward and reached out to take it. Get lost. Jiang Tianxin waved his hand, causing him to stumble backwards. You can't finish it anyway. What's wrong with giving us some? How can you be so stingy? Sean said angrily. I can feed it to the dogs if I can't finish it, but I won't give it to you. Jiang Tian sneered. Sean had forced him to jump off the plane because Jiang Tian was powerful. If he was a normal person, he would have died. Now he was trying to take advantage of him again. How shameless. You. Sean was so angry that his face turned red. His hand reached for the pistol at his waist, but when he saw Anfia beside him, he could only suppress his anger and mock. You didn't bring a tent or warm clothes. There will be a time when you beg us. With that, he turned around angrily. Jiang Tian, how did you land safely just now? Anfia asked curiously. Jiang Tianli ignored all of them, and just ate the roasted rabbit with relish. What's there to be arrogant about? Is that so great? Anfia had felt a little guilty toward Jiang Tian, but when she saw that he was ignoring her, she couldn't help but feel a little angry. She was proud of her beauty, and she was the daughter of a rich oligarch. Even the Russian emperor doted on her. After eating the hare, he continued to walk forward with a swagger. Anfia's group followed behind him. This kid is too annoying. Why don't we kill him? Sean said viciously to Connolly as he stared at Jiang Tian's back. Wait. Connolly frowned and thought hard. He was eating a roasted rabbit just now. It wasn't a polar bear, seal, or seabird. This is too strange. It was indeed a roasted rabbit. I saw the skin of a roasted rabbit next to him. It was gray. The tank guide frowned and said, but how could there be a roasted rabbit in the Arctic Circle? He must have brought it here. But Connolly's clothes were thin and he didn't have a bag. He also didn't have a place to bring a roasted rabbit. It's very strange. Yes, it's very strange. There's no way to explain it. Sean also noticed the abnormality and scratched his head. Connolly quickly walked over to Anfia and told her his analysis and suspicions. Then his eyes flashed with greed. He was so excited that his hands were slightly trembling as he said in a deep voice, "That's right. It's rumored that the cultivation world of Wuxia has a spatial artifact. It can fold space. Maybe he's using this kind of thing. Let's find a suitable opportunity to kill him and steal his treasure." Chapter 739. Connolly's eyes were greedy as he eagerly said, "If our research team can understand the secret of space control and mass-produce this kind of treasure, we will be rich. This is an epoch-making scientific advancement. It can even be called a revolution." Anfia pondered for a moment, but still shook her head and said, "Uncle Connolly, I have always respected your opinion, but this time I don't agree." "Why?" Connolly asked puzzledly. "Could it be that Princess Anfia likes him? It's not worth it. He has some ability, but he is just an ordinary person." "How is that possible? I, Anfia, do not belong to any man. I only belong to myself." Amphia's face turned red as she defended herself. "I knew it. Anfia would not like him. Only someone like the Russian emperor can be worthy of the noble Anfia." Connolly laughed, but then his face turned gloomy as he said, "Then there's no problem. As long as you give the order, Tank and I will immediately take action. We have rockets, grenades, and even a laser gun. Killing him should not be a problem. Mr. Connolly, I believe you have the strength, but this is robbery, this is murder. I am not willing to do this." Anfia said, "I believe in cooperation more now. Give me some time. I can persuade him to cooperate with us. We will give him a large sum of money, and he will take out his treasure for our research. He can also help us with our research. Isn't this a good thing? Alright, you can try. But I think he is too arrogant, he might not agree. Connolly bitterly smiled and did not insist. At this time, Jiang Tian had already spread out his divine sense and heard their conversation. But Jiang Tian did not take it to heart. They wanted to kill him with just a few sticks. It was no different from a fool's dream. But Jiang Tian was too lazy to deal with them. Because Jiang Tian had discovered something even stranger. The entire Sword Tomb Island seemed to have a very frightening and strange power. This power was erratic, making it difficult for Jiang Tian to circulate his true yuan. If he wanted to fly, the consumption of true yuan was not small. Moreover, the range of his divine sense was greatly reduced. Originally, Jiang Tian's spiritual sense could cover a distance of over 100 miles, but now it could only scan an area of about 10 miles. Moreover, Jiang Tian realized that his satellite phone had no signal at all. At this time, Xiao In and Tank were also complaining that the signal of the walkie-talkie had disappeared again. They asked everyone to stay together and not get separated. Jiang Tian had been cultivating for 10,000 years and had a wealth of experience. Through some clues, Jiang Tian quickly determined that this was not the power of the Sword Tomb's formation or restriction, but an extremely rare creature. Or rather demons. In the Arctic Circle, especially near the Severnaya Zemlya, many unsolved mysteries had happened. In 1922, the research ship Blue Seagull of the Russian Academy of Sciences once sailed and conducted scientific research near the Severnaya Zemlya, but suddenly the satellite signal was cut off and they lost contact. A few months later, the Russian Navy's salvage team found the blue seabird near Elam Island in Severnaya Zemlya. However, there was no one on the ship. All 24 members of the scientific research team had disappeared into thin air. However, the strange thing was that there were no traces of a struggle, and there was no loss of property. What was even more strange was that although the black box on the blue seabird looked intact on the outside, the data recorded inside had disappeared without a trace. The black box was fireproof, shockproof, and waterproof. Historically, it was almost impossible for the data to disappear. Later, scientific researchers discovered that the electromagnetic waves near the Severnaya Zemlya would be severely interfered with, or even completely disappear. Therefore, in the scientific community, this area was also known as the Land of Dead Silence, or Island of Dead Silence. In addition, there were also moving stones. According to NASA's observation, on the Sword Tomb Island, through the comparison of satellite images, there were many boulders weighing more than a few tons that could move on the ice by themselves and could travel thousands of meters in one night. Until now, many scientists had come up with various speculations and explanations for this strange phenomenon. There were also huge footprints. There were once tourists who discovered huge footprints more than 50 centimeters long on the Severnaya Zemlya. They took photos and posted them on the internet. There were even people who took pictures of the giants and snow monsters appearing in this place, and they spoke with certainty. However, because it was a civilian who discovered and took photos and posted them, many authorities claimed that it was just a gimmick deliberately created by some bored people who wanted to become famous, just like the crop circle. However, considering that when Jiang Tian defeated Japan and France, there were official refutations of these rumors, it seemed that these rumors were not just groundless accusations. If these rumors are true, then it might really be the doing of these monsters. Jiang Tian heaved a long sigh, frowned, and muttered to himself, I didn't expect that such a rare monster would appear on Earth. Logically speaking, such a powerful monster shouldn't appear in this world. Could it be that there was a crisscross and chaos in the parallel space that led them to enter Earth? This kind of monster was so powerful that it could be said that other than Jiang Tian, there were few people on Earth who knew how to deal with it. Even the immortal state, mortal deity, and Earth deity had no way to deal with it. Basically, no one who entered the Sword Tomb Island today except for him could survive. Therefore, he did not intend to kill Xiao In, Connolly, and the others. These cannon fodder meat shields could be used to test the strength of this strange monster. Based on the habits of this strange monster, Jiang Tian felt that there was no need to waste his true essence. He just needed to avoid it and fight it head-on. Soon, Jiang Tian found an area where he could avoid the strange monster. He decided to rest for a while and completely recover his strength and true essence before moving forward. The area Jiang Tian found was very strange. It was not covered in snow at all, and there was even steam rising from it. There were also dozens of monkey-billed seabirds gathered there. Jiang Tian took out a piece of ordinary jade and drew an array in the blink of an eye. Then, he put it in his pocket and sat there to rest. At the same time, Anfia and the others also set up tents in an area near Jiang Tian and set up camp. Jiang Tian had a good impression of Anfia. At least, she was not the kind of person who bullied the weak. Therefore, he said calmly, "Anfia, you'd better set up camp here. Otherwise, you'll be in great danger. You might even die. Of course, if you're unwilling to leave, you'll have to leave someone behind to patrol the area. It'll be easier for you to escape. I think Teacher Jiang is worrying too much." Anfia said nothing. Connolly disdainfully sneered. "This place is still very far from the sword mound. There's no danger here." He swung his sleeves and confidently said, "Even if there is danger, I'll stand guard here. There won't be any problems." Shaoan believed that Jiang Tian was waiting for an opportunity to get close to Anfia. How could he agree? He taunted, "Your place is full of bird droppings. It's too disgusting. Why would Princess Anfia go to your place?" "Thank you, Teacher Jiang, but forget it." Anfia saw that the area Jiang Tian was in was indeed full of bird droppings, so she shook her head and softly refused. The young masters immediately mocked with disdain. "That's right. Since you're so timid, you shouldn't have come here to explore. It's just a little snow here. What's there to be afraid of? You're not even afraid of Anfia, but he's scared to this extent. You're worse than a girl. He's so delicate, just like a girl. That's normal. Wuxia people are cowardly, and lacking in courage. They're a nation of sheep." In the end, even the guide, Tank, arrogantly crossed his arms and shook his head, curling his lips in disdain. "Now, I'm letting you in. You think this place is dirty. Later, when there's danger, you want to come in again. I won't give you the chance," Jiang Tian said with a mocking smile. "Who cares?" Xiao En disdainfully said. "You want to pursue Anfia? That's too funny. Others give diamonds, but you give her bird droppings." The other young masters burst into laughter. "Uncle Connolly, I think you're mistaken. Anfia originally wanted to talk to Jiang Tian about the Dharma treasure, but after thinking about it, Jiang Tian was so timid. How could he be a true expert? One had to know that those who own Dharma treasures were definitely extraordinary existences. How could they be so timid? Perhaps Jiang Tian's hair and cooking utensils were picked up by him and left behind by the previous explorers." After hearing her explanation, Connolly slapped his thigh and laughed. "That's true. I was too nervous. A young man like him is only a transcendent realm cultivator, and those who can control Dharma treasures are said to be terrifying existences above the immortal state." At this moment, one of the young masters, Reynolds, who was close to Xiao En, snorted coldly and said in a low voice, "Since he's not an expert, let's just kill him. He's like a shadow. Too disgusting." This was a no man's land, a place outside the law. If they killed someone, they could dig up a pile of snow and bury him. No one would find out. Therefore, many of the young masters' hidden violent tendencies were stimulated, and they were eager to give it a try. At this point, Connolly had an indifferent attitude, so he didn't say anything. Anfia looked at Jiang Tian in disappointment. This place was still very far from the sword catacomb. If he was so timid and afraid of death, wouldn't he wet his pants when he faced real danger? Sigh, perhaps I shouldn't have brought him here. Although she was disappointed, Anfia muttered to herself for a moment before finally shaking her head. "Forget it. Let's not cause unnecessary trouble. None of you are allowed to kill him." "Okay, I'll listen to Princess Anfia." Reynolds smiled apologetically and nodded. He then gave Jiang Tian a malicious smile. But a moment later, Reynolds came to Shaoan's side and said in a low voice, "I'll use the sniper rifle to kill him when Anfia isn't paying attention. I don't think anyone will find out." "Okay, I'm pursuing Anfia. It's not good to kill someone in front of her." You're the best choice. Xiaoan laughed mischievously and nodded. After walking for a long time, everyone was tired. After eating some rations and chatting for a while, they crawled into their tents and sleeping bags to rest. Seeing this, Jiang Tian shook his head. This group of people was too careless. They should have at least left a few people outside to patrol. But they actually all fell asleep. But Jiang Tian couldn't be bothered to remind them. This group of people didn't have good intentions. He had already done his duty by reminding Amphia. That monster had already poked its head out and looked around. Now all he had to do was wait and watch them get killed. Chapter 740. In the sky, the green aurora borealis flickered and flickered erratically, changing in an instant. The area was quiet, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. After some time, a shrill scream was suddenly heard, and then it stopped abruptly. Who's screaming? What's going on? Everyone was awakened from their sleep. They came out of their tents and gathered to count the number of people. Reynolds isn't here. Go to his tent. Everyone rushed to Reynolds' tent to check. And then they were so scared that they fell to the ground and screamed. They saw that Reynolds had been frozen into a block of ice, and had died an unnatural death. There were several terrifying wounds on his body, as if he had been cut by a sharp blade, or clawed by a tiger or lion. What was even more terrifying was that Reynolds was lazy. He didn't even take off his Kevlar bulletproof vest when he slept. But now even the bulletproof vest had been cut open. Seeing this, everyone exclaimed and retreated. Even Connolly was shocked. Could it be a polar bear attack? But that's not right. There are no beast footprints nearby. There are no polar bears on Dead Silence Island. To be exact, there are no creatures other than humans. The tank guide, said in fear. What kind of creature's claws can easily cut open a Kevlar bulletproof vest? Everyone was scared. At this time, Connolly noticed that Jiang Tian didn't have a tent, which meant that Jiang Tian might be an eyewitness. He asked loudly, Mr. Jiang, did you see something invading? I saw it. Jiang Tian said calmly. This thing should be called Snow Demon. It's more than 10 meters tall, extremely low temperature, and covered in ice. It has 2 big claws the size of wash basins with sharp bone hooks on them. Moreover, it can transform at will and disguise itself as you. It's impossible to guard against it. Even shamans and werewolves can't defeat it. So you'd better leave quickly. It's too dangerous. Connolly was furious and shouted. Mr. Jiang, are you kidding me? Mr. Jiang, are you making fun of me? The Snow Demon is a monster that only appeared in legends. It's nonsense. Only a village woman would believe it. How can it be true? Jiang Tian found it laughable and said indifferently, so werewolves and shamans are just legends. In fact, Connolly was a shaman. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was also a superstition and legend. As a shaman, he possessed magic power that ordinary people could not explain. However, Connolly did not even believe in Snow Devil. His thinking was so old-fashioned and conventional. This was very laughable. Actually, there was no need for anyone to die. If you had listened to my advice, Jiang Tian said calmly. Connolly, Sean, and Tank were so embarrassed that their faces turned red. It was as if they had been slapped in the face. After all, Jiang Tian had just warned them that this place was dangerous and they had to be careful. But they all thought that Jiang Tian was cowardly, like a woman. If they had listened to Jiang Tian's advice and directly ended the exploration and returned to a safe area, or were cautious, Reynolds would not have died so easily. If you leave now, you still have a chance to live. Otherwise, your chances of survival are slim. Jiang Tian slowly closed his eyes. Connolly was already somewhat depressed and remorseful after Reynolds's tragic death. At this time, Jiang Tian's words touched his sore spot. He could not help but fly into a rage and snort coldly. Kid, I'm leading the team. How can you say anything? How do you know what I'm capable of? As he spoke, he waved his hand and an inch-long flame bloomed between his fingers. He proudly straightened his body. His body suddenly became like a mountain, and his aura was stern as he said in a low voice. What bullshit, Snow Devil. If it touches me, it will also be burned to ashes and turned into sewage. He can actually create flames out of thin air. This is too amazing. Wow. I didn't expect Mr. Connolly to be so powerful. I've long heard that Mr. Connolly is a Caucasus Grand Shaman who can control flames. I didn't believe it before, but seeing it today, it is indeed so. With Connolly here, any snow devil will be scared shitless. When everyone saw this, they clicked their tongues in amazement. The original dejection and fear were swept away, and they became 100 times more confident. Mr. Jiang, do you have such ability? What do you think of my hellfire? Connolly thought that his flame would be able to subdue Jiang Tian, so he asked with a face full of pride. Not very good. Jiang Tian did not even bat an eyelid as he smiled mockingly. Connolly's fire control skills were definitely amazing in the eyes of ordinary people, but in fact they were just ordinary flames. And the fireball talismans that Jiang Tian created now were comparable to the 3 true fire. In his previous life he had even refined the essence of fire and all kinds of strange flames. So why would he care about it? Not very good was already very polite. Otherwise Jiang Tian would have said it was rubbish. Good. Very good. When we reach the sword catacomb, I hope you don't ask me for help. Connolly was so angry that his face turned green. He smiled coldly and turned to leave. Connolly is so powerful, but he doesn't care about him. He's too arrogant. He offended Connolly. I'm afraid he's in for it. At least when there is danger, Connolly won't save him. He can just wait for death. But to the others, it was no different from Jiang Tian slapping Connolly in the face again. They were all very disdainful of Jiang Tian. Sigh, his EQ is too low. Seeing this, Amphia also shook her head lightly. Jiang Tian's words just now were indeed unnecessary. No matter what, he should have given Connolly some face and not slapped him in the face. Others might not know, but she knew that Connolly was the strongest in the team. He was even stronger than Sean, Tank, and everyone in the team. Jiang Tian had offended him. If there was really danger, why would Connolly save him? It was useless even if she begged for mercy. Now that Renault was dead, no one was in the mood to sleep. They buried the body a few hundred meters away and left a sign. Then everyone gathered together to drink and chat. They even sent people to patrol outside in shifts. After all, if there were more deaths, it would be too embarrassing for Connolly and the team. Patter. Patter. While everyone was chatting, suddenly there was a soft sound of footsteps in the distance. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and could not help but be stunned. Their hair stood on end and their souls were about to leave their bodies. They saw that Renault, who was originally buried in the ice and snow, had actually come back to life and was staggering back. Renault, aren't you dead? Sean frowned and asked. His teeth were chattering. What dead? Renault said angrily. I didn't die at all. I was just frozen. Now that the ice has melted, I naturally came back to life. What about the wounds on your body? Connolly's eyes were a little wary. At this time, the wounds on Renault's body were all gone. This was too strange. After receiving Connolly's signal, Tank immediately ran out to check the place where Renault was buried. Renault's body is still there. He's a fake. He's an evil spirit. Hurry up and kill him. A moment later, Tank yelled as he ran back quickly. Hearing this, clatter. Everyone jumped up together and distanced themselves from Renault. Someone pulled out a gun, loaded it, and aimed at Renault. Tank, why did you harm me? Reynolds took a step back in fear. He then pointed at the tank and said resolutely, Don't worry. You're a fake. You ate the real Tank and then disguised yourself as him. Connolly, this is a trap. You have to believe me. Tank shouted loudly and anxiously. The real Renault is already dead. The current Renault is a fake. Hurry up and give the order to shoot. Connolly, Sean, Amphia, and many of the guards were frightened. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. The situation at this time made their minds confused, and they were completely dizzy. How about this? Let's go to the place where Renault is buried together, and everything will be clear. Connolly had an idea and said loudly, Now you two throw away your guns and cooperate with the team to verify. Don't look. They're both fake. They're both snow devils. At this time Jiang Tian said coldly, Don't think about shooting. Hurry up and run, or it'll be too late. Swish. Everyone turned to look at Jiang Tian and shouted angrily. You're still making sarcastic remarks at this time. One of them must be real. How can both of them be fake? He must be messing with our morale. He wants us to kill each other or scare us away, so that he can enjoy the treasures of the sword catacomb alone. Is he really messing with us? At this time, even Amphia felt that Jiang Tian had gone a bit too far. If the tank was killed, he would have screamed in fear. He was a special forces soldier. But at this time, Amphia suddenly felt that something was wrong. She felt an extreme chill on her back. Yes, the temperature of the Arctic Circle was extremely low, but she was wearing special thermal clothing, so she could still bear it. But at this time, the chill on her back exploded. It was as if tens of thousands of steel needles had pierced through her clothes. She even felt that she could not bear it, and her whole body was almost paralyzed. Amphia subconsciously turned her head and screamed in fright. My cute little Princess Amphia. Renaud suddenly opened his mouth and laughed. Crack! Renaud's mouth cracked to his ears. His white teeth were like sharp long knives, spewing out white ice crystals and snowflakes, instantly covering his teeth with a layer of white frost. Renaud's eyes also turned into ice crystals in an instant. There were no whites or pupils in his eyes, just like an ice ball. Then he roared like a tiger and bit Amphia. Amphia, push him. Connolly reacted quickly. He grabbed Amphia's collar with his right hand and threw her back more than 10 meters. At the same time, he pulled out a small human skin drum from his waist and hit it with a piece of bone as a drumstick. He shouted angrily, Hellfire, in the name of God's punishment. Go to hell. Boom. A fire dragon more than 10 meters long swept toward Renaud with bared fangs and brandished claws. The temperature was very high, as if it could melt gold and iron. Within 100 meters, the ice and snow melted. Everyone felt an extreme heat. At the same time, many of the guards moved. Bullets rained down on Reynolds like rain. Some shamans and priests also attacked Renaud with their magical artifacts. Their attacks were overwhelming and powerful. But the most terrifying thing was that Connolly's hellfire was useless. It was extinguished when it was a few meters away from Renaud. Chapter 741. The temperature plummeted, and an ice wall suddenly appeared, freezing all the bullets in the air. How is this possible? Connolly was stunned when he saw this. He was so scared that his face turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. The human-skinned Hell's Drum had an extraordinary origin. It was his most powerful move, but it could not restrain the opponent at all. I'll help. Xiaoen wanted to show off in front of Amphia, so he took large strides forward and threw a punch at Reynolds. At this time, he did not hide his powerful werewolf bloodline, and stimulated his potential to the limit. The punch was like a cannonball flying across the sky, containing earth-shattering power. Even a small car would be sent flying by it. You're too weak. The demonized Renaud snorted disdainfully and clenched his fists. Chi. Several 1-meter-long bone blades emerged from the tip of his fists, just like Wolverine after transformation. Then, he waved his arms and slashed the sharp bone blades at Sean without hesitation. The bone blades were crystal clear like ice and jade, but they were incomparably sharp and could cut through alloy steel. It hurts. Sean retreated quickly, but 3 fingers on his right hand were chopped off in an instant. Blood flowed out as he screamed and retreated. In the next moment, Reynolds dashed forward like an arrow, running as if he was flying, drifting like a ghost. He waved his bone blade wildly, causing blood to spurt out. In the blink of an eye, he had killed several guards. At this time, Amphia ran in panic and actually fled to Jiang Tian's location. Renaud chased after a few steps, but a trace of fear flashed across his face. He actually stopped abruptly. Is there something strange about this place? The temperature seems to be much higher than outside. Seeing this, Amphia suddenly realized what was going on. She waved her hand and shouted, Come here, Mr. Jiang is safe here. Run. Everyone ran toward Jiang Tian's location. I didn't expect Mr. Jiang to be an expert. I can see that these two are monsters. A young master said, wiping his cold sweat. Humph, what's so great about him? Tank is not a monster. He's mistaken. Connolly was flustered and exasperated. He then shouted, Bring Tank in too. Is he scared out of his wits? Yes. One of the guards nearby responded and grabbed Tank, who had been standing there motionlessly, and started running. Tank, why aren't you running? Why should I run? Shouldn't you be the one running? Behind him, a sinister voice rang out. It sounded like ice crystals rubbing against each other. It was so ear-piercing that it made one's teeth ache. When the guard turned around to look, he couldn't help but be frightened out of his wits, and fell on his butt. Tank, don't kill me. Have you forgotten that we drank together just now? The tank suddenly turned into a monster that was 8 meters tall, covered in white fur, with a huge head and protruding fangs. Oh my God! The guard's scream stopped abruptly. This was because the transformed tank had already picked up his head and started chewing and swallowing it. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they almost wet their pants on the spot. As Tank's mouth opened and closed, the guard's brain was splattered. Blood gushed out, and his chest was crushed. In the blink of an eye, he was completely eaten by Tank. Fortunately, everyone had already run to Jiang Tian and entered the area of influence of Jiang Tian's spell formation. The two snow demons looked at Jiang Tian fearfully and didn't follow him. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. They no longer had the slightest bit of disrespect for Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian was able to protect himself, or rather, he was able to find this safe zone. Just based on this point alone, they could only sigh at their own inferiority. If not for Jiang Tian occupying this safe zone, it could be said that they would have become corpses by now. However, in this battle, 7 or 8 of their companions had already died. Moreover, the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Fresh blood stained the ground red, reminding everyone that the danger before them was not over yet. The desolate and deathly still ice and snow island, the extreme weather conditions, the strange and powerful terrifying creatures, the endless dangers, and the unknown fate. All of this was like a huge boulder pressing down on everyone's hearts. Everyone's nerves were so tense that they felt like they were about to snap. At this moment, the two strange creatures began to eat the bloody corpses outside the spell formation. Tsk tisk. They sat on the ground, their sharp teeth cutting through the skulls. They even extended their large claws into the skulls and pulled the brain into their mouths. They swallowed the flesh and brain in large mouthfuls. Munch. The sound of chewing and eating could be heard from afar. Everyone's hair stood on end and goosebumps appeared on their skin. After all, those were human corpses. They were their own kind and companions. However, they had now become food for these creatures. At this moment, Renault and Tank had returned to their human forms. They turned their heads from time to time. Their crystal ball-like eyeballs emitted a cold glint as they quietly stared at everyone. Amphia had a very strange feeling. These two monsters had emotions. Yes, it was a kind of disdain and contempt. It was like a high-level life form looking down on a low-level life form. It was as if they were sizing up their food. Did I say you could come in? At this moment, a cold voice sounded out, and everyone turned to look at Jiang Tian in unison. What do you mean? Shaowen's right hand had been bandaged. The scar had yet to heal, but he had already forgotten the pain. He anxiously shouted with a pale face. Is this your territory? This is Russian territory. Why can't we come here? That's right. You only discovered that these two monsters can't come to this place, but this place doesn't belong to you. Do you want to monopolize it? What a joke. The other young master, Quinn, also loudly shouted. Mr. Jiang, I admit that you are an expert, but you are too narrow-minded. Connolly was righteous and held the moral high ground. He said contemptuously, we won't stay here. We won't get in your way if we stay here. Why do you have to be so aggressive and harm others without benefiting yourself? Isn't it good to be kind to others? Amphia also tried to persuade him. That's right, Mr. Jiang. Just help them. After all, we are a team. Oh, now you remember that we are a team? Jiang Tian was so angry that he almost laughed. He laughed mockingly and said, now you remember to be kind to others? I have repeatedly warned you not to put yourselves in danger, but you thought that I was harming you. Why didn't you treat me as your teammate back then? Why didn't you listen to my opinion? When Xiaoen forced me to jump off the plane. Why didn't you say that we were a team? When Connolly wanted to kill me and steal my treasure, did you treat me as your teammate? Renault and Xiaoen even wanted to shoot me. At that time, what did you treat me as? Not to mention that I met you by chance. I had already paid for this trip before I set off. We originally had nothing to do with each other. Why should I help you when you have repeatedly tried to harm me? With every word Jiang Tian said, everyone's faces turned redder. By the time Jiang Tian finished speaking, everyone felt as if they had been slapped a dozen times. Their faces were so red that it was as if blood was about to drip out. That's right. Jiang Tian had warned them more than once before, but no one took it seriously. Some thought that Jiang Tian was showing off his ability to attract Enfia's attention and win her favor. Some thought that Jiang Tian wanted to monopolize the treasure on Sword Tomb Island and scared everyone away. Even if Renault and Tank were in a strange situation and death was close at hand, when Jiang Tian reminded them, no one believed him. They were still high and mighty, repeatedly disrespecting Jiang Tian, mocking and threatening him. But now it was proven that Jiang Tian was not exaggerating at all. They really did not have the ability to deal with danger. If they had listened to Jiang Tian's opinion from the beginning, no one would have died. Even if they had followed, if they had entered Jiang Tian's camp from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Hearing those words, the crowd was speechless. Their faces turned red, and they were extremely embarrassed. They felt so ashamed that they had no way to show their faces. The cruel truth was that Jiang Tian's words were like a heavy slap to everyone's face. It could be said that when compared to Jiang Tian, everyone seemed to be ignorant and stupid to the extreme. Moreover, they were extremely stubborn. What was even worse was that Connolly, Sean, Renault, Tank, and the others had all wanted to kill Jiang Tian. If Enfia had not stopped them, they might have already taken action and shot Jiang Tian to death. But now that danger had erupted, why should they need Jiang Tian's protection? Where was their shame? Where was their shame? Mr. Jiang, I know we are in the wrong. I sincerely apologize to you and ask for your forgiveness. But I hope you can help us. Enfia's face was full of shame. She bowed deeply and sincerely apologized, pleading with tears in her beautiful eyes. In fact, she was partly responsible for the current consequences. In this expedition, the guide was Tank, and the escort team was organized and led by Connolly. They all had the right to speak. But the organizer was Enfia. In fact, she was the biggest leader and the final commander. If she had a worried heart, if she had recognized Jiang Tian's extraordinariness and listened to his advice, so many people would not have died. But Connolly was even more unhappy. This was equivalent to him being recognized as a mistake and slapped in the face. Actually, being slapped in the face was a small matter. The key was that the people who had died all had great backgrounds and were not to be trifled with. They were either shamans or priests, or the young masters of oligarchs. And after the trip ended, it was very likely that someone would be held accountable. And he, Connolly, would be the first person responsible. What kind of teammate are you? If you were a teammate, why didn't you call everyone over when something happened just now? Connolly was completely desperate at this moment. He wanted to argue even if it was unreasonable. He wanted to paint white as black. You didn't do anything from the beginning to the end, nor did you say anything. You just watched as they were killed. His gaze was cold, and his words were sharp. Every word of his was a stab to the heart. Why didn't the two monsters attack you? Why were you so familiar with their habits even when you saw them? Why were you able to determine that they wouldn't come if you were in this place? Every time he asked a question, he would take a step forward and ask a few questions. He was already facing Jiang Tian and roaring angrily. I even suspect that you are in cahoots with them, or that they are monsters that you have reared. Chapter 742. As soon as he said that, everyone was provoked. They all stepped back and looked at Jiang Tian with fear and hatred. What Connolly said makes sense. That's indeed suspicious. Be careful of him. Some of the guards even pointed their guns at Jiang Tian. They were on high alert, afraid that Jiang Tian would attack them. Put down your guns. Mr. Jiang is not our enemy. Enfia's face turned red from anger at her pig-like teammates. She shouted loudly. Haha, if I wanted to kill you, I could kill you easily. Do you think you're still alive? Jiang Tian laughed. His eyes were full of disdain. After all, this is just our guess. I don't have any evidence. So let's both compromise. Connolly was emboldened by everyone's support. He threatened in a cold voice. We'll hold you responsible. We'll hold you accountable. We won't kill you, but you have to give up this safe zone. Okay. I'll leave, but don't kowtow to me later. Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Connolly as if he was looking at a fool. Why should I kowtow to you? Connolly said disdainfully. Because once I leave, you'll be killed. Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Haha, come on. The farther you go, the better. You're the biggest threat. Sean snorted. That's right. Leave now. We'll be safe after you leave. Bruce, another young master, snorted. Leave now. Leave now. The group of young masters waved their hands to chase them away, as if Jiang Tian would do them harm. In fact, from their point of view, such a choice was not wrong. Jiang Tian was also made of flesh and blood. If he left, he would definitely attract the attention of the two monsters, right? The two monsters would be full after eating Jiang Tian, so they wouldn't need to eat them. You wait for your death. Jiang Tian shook his head. He didn't want to say anything more. He took a step forward and walked toward the sword catacomb. The place Jiang Tian was in was indeed extraordinary. It was a land of fire spirits. Deep underground, there was a surge of fire spirit energy. That was why there was heat on the surface. Seabirds gathered and left behind large amounts of bird droppings. This fire spiritual aura was indeed the bane of the snow demons, causing them to be wary and avoid it. However, the fire spiritual chi alone was not enough to stop them. After all, the fire spiritual energy was hundreds of meters deep underground, and had been weakened to 80 to 90% by the time it reached the surface. The real counter to the snow devil was a jade pendant that Jiang Tian had drawn with an array that had the effect of buffing and gathering. However, the moment Jiang Tian took the jade pendant away, the entire area would be rendered useless. The two snow devils would still be able to move around freely. Mr. Jiang, please stay. It's dangerous outside. Amphia subconsciously called out. She probably felt that it was not right to do so. After all, this safe zone was discovered by Jiang Tian, but now everyone had chased Jiang Tian away. Amphia, this Mr. Jiang is strange. I think we should stay away from him. Connolly hurriedly stopped her, his eyes cold. Think about it. How did he know that monsters would appear? Why didn't those monsters eat him? Amphia had never encountered such a dangerous situation. She had never seen so many of her companions die at once. She was a little dazed from the shock. In that moment of hesitation, Jiang Tian was already hundreds of meters away. Mr. Jiang, come back. Amphia shouted, but Jiang Tian ignored her. Haha, those two monsters have discovered him. He's going to be bitten to death. Sean was ecstatic when he saw that Tank and Renault had turned to look in Jiang Tian's direction. Yes. That idiot. He just left when we told him to. What a brainless fool. Bruce said mockingly. That's great. If they eat him again, they should be full and let us go. The heir of the oligarch called Quinn slapped his thigh and laughed, but his tears flowed like crazy. Why aren't you eating? Your food is out. Some of the young masters couldn't wait and shouted at the two monsters, reminding them to eat Jiang Tian. In such a dangerous place, under extreme fear and under heavy psychological pressure, the ugliness of human nature was magnified 10 times, 100 times. Many hidden ruthlessness, cruelty, despicableness, and selfishness were all stimulated. The degeneration of human nature was like the night of 100 ghosts and demons. However, everyone's laughter suddenly stopped. Everyone's smiles froze on their faces. Tank and Renault turned their heads in unison and looked over. Their cold eyes flashed with greed and savagery. What are they doing? Quinn screamed desperately. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he trembled. Sean was so scared that his legs trembled and he peed frantically. Tank and Renault had already stood up and were approaching them. Chi. One of the guards held a laser gun and fired at the two snow demons. The two snow demons' chests were pierced and smoke rose. However, they were instantly covered in ice crystals and repaired in the blink of an eye. God! Come and save me. Mom, I want to go home. What kind of monster is this? Even a laser gun can't kill it. It's too scary. At this moment, everyone was wailing in despair. Even Connolly's eyes were filled with fear. He was so scared that he was trembling. This was a high-energy laser weapon. It could be said to be the most powerful portable weapon. It could even cut through steel plate and titanium alloy. This kind of gun was still in the laboratory stage. It was more expensive than a Mi-26. Usually, the army was not equipped with it. This was one of the most advanced weapons factory in Russia that Anfia's family had taken from the laboratory. However, it was useless. Dong, dong, dong. The heavy footsteps seemed to be stepping on everyone's hearts. Everyone's heartbeat sped up, and they found it difficult to breathe. Everyone was in despair. What should we do? The young master named Bruce was trembling. Tears were streaming down his face as he yelled hysterically, "I'm sorry. I want to go home. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. I still have a lot of money to spend. I still want to drink vodka. I still want to sleep with beauties. How is this possible? Isn't this a safe zone?" Connolly was also panicking. He did not know what to do and could not believe it. At this moment, the two snow demons were only 10 meters away from them. However, no one tried to escape. They were just huddled together like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They knew that they could not escape. The snow demons were as fast as flying horses. Even if they escaped, they would still die. Get out! All of a sudden, Sean's eyes turned vicious. He raised his leg and kicked Kane's lower back. After all, Sean had the blood of a werewolf. His strength was far greater than that of an ordinary person. Kane was kicked more than 10 meters away. Kane only saw a blur in front of his eyes. When he looked again, he saw that the two demons had already opened their bloody mouths. Who kicked me? Kane was trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He panted crazily and said to Tank and Reynolds in a choked voice, "I know I'm dead for sure, but I just want to know who the fuck kicked me. Guess." Tank licked the saliva at the corner of his mouth with his long tongue, and asked jokingly, "I guess it's Bruce. I slept with his girlfriend. I think he already knows." Kane hesitated for a moment and said, "Fuck." Bruce gritted his teeth and cursed. He did not expect to hear this news before he died. It was too tragic. "No, it's Sean who kicked you." Tank grinned. His mouth split open to the roots of his ears. His teeth were as sharp as steel knives and sticky saliva hung from them. "Haha, humans are really interesting." Reynolds laughed out loud. "Yeah, so interesting." Tank agreed. "Sean, you fucking piece of shit." Kane was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He left his last words, which were eaten up by Tank in the blink of an eye. Clang, clang, clang. Reynolds took large strides and ran toward Connolly and the others. Everyone cried out miserably as they pushed each other forward, throwing away their helmets and armors. It was complete chaos. Calm down, calm down. This is a safe zone. He won't be able to get in." Connolly still had a glimmer of hope and tried to comfort everyone. But it turned out that he was too optimistic. Reynolds rushed over in the blink of an eye and directly grabbed a young master. He pulled one of his thighs and tore it apart. Blood splattered and dripped down. Steaming hot internal organs flowed out. The young master did not even have time to scream before he was torn into 2 pieces. This was a bloody scene. It was extremely horrifying and made one's scalp tingle. After tearing the young master apart, Reynolds immediately bit and ate heartily. He then rushed toward the others. "It's useless. This place is not safe. Run." There was utterly no need for Connolly's reminder. The crowd that was terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies shrieked and scattered in all directions like terrified stray dogs. However, they were too slow. Or rather, they were too slow compared to the two snow demons. Reynolds and Tank roared loudly. Their roars were like thunder, and they were like galloping horses. They waved their claws full of bone hooks and chased after the group. Chi, chi, chi. Heads flew up and blood splattered on the ice. In the blink of an eye, they were frozen and their internal organs flowed out. The exploration team members fell into a pool of blood one by one like harvested rice. Unlike the others who were running wildly, Anfia still retained some rationality. She ran in the direction that Jiang Tian had left. She could now conclude that Jiang Tian was definitely not an ordinary person. That place was not a safe zone, and Jiang Tian himself was the best protective talisman. Only by staying by Jiang Tian's side would they be safe. In this place, only Jiang Tian could save everyone's lives. Mr. Jiang, save us. Anfia had already seen Jiang Tian's back from afar, and cried out happily. However, Anfia was directly knocked to the ground by Shan, who was running wildly in a panic. Her ankle was sprained. After getting up, her speed decreased sharply, and she was about to be caught. Roar. When Reynolds saw this, his eyes were ferocious and excited. He opened his bloody mouth and roared at the sky. He broke through the heavy snow and quickly chased after them. Help! Anfia cried out for help to Sean, Connolly, and the others who were running past her. However, Sean could not even take care of himself. How could he care about her? He was running for his life like a rabbit being chased by a ferocious tiger. In a matter of life and death, the cowardice and selfishness of human nature would be magnified infinitely. Otherwise, Shaoan wouldn't have kicked his good friend Kane out to be a meat shield. Chapter 743. He loved Anfia very much, but at this moment, under the threat of death, he couldn't care less. It could even be said that he had purposely knocked Anfia down. If Anfia was eaten, it would at least delay the monsters for a while, and his chances of survival would be higher. Connolly did not care about his employer anymore. His fire control was useless against these monsters, and he would only die if he went up. At this moment, his adrenaline was rapidly secreting, and he could not help but tremble as he ran without looking back. They quickly ran a kilometer away, and only Anfia was left behind. She was about to be caught by the two snow demons. It's over. Anfia is dead for sure. A guard looked back, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. Should we go and save her? Otherwise, how are we going to report back? A guard asked hesitantly. Save. How? Sean's face was as pale as paper as he cursed. If you want to save her, then go. Stop arguing, it's so annoying. This adventure is over. Connolly shook his head helplessly and sighed softly. Let's go quickly. When we reach a place where we can find satellite signals, we'll call for a helicopter to pick us up. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes as he swept his gaze across the crowd. If his family asks, you have to remember that we did not leave him in the lurch. We did our best. All the dead sacrificed themselves to save Anfia. Anfia did not expect that these young masters, who usually flattered her in every way possible, and these loyal guards who called themselves heroes, would choose to stand by and do nothing at this critical moment. Roar. Renault's mouth cracked open, and his teeth were as sharp as icicles as he roared at Anfia. I don't want to die. Facing this unkillable monster, Anfia stumbled back and fell to the ground, crying helplessly. Evil creature, get lost. Just as Anfia was in despair, a soft shout rang out. Anfia turned around and saw Jiang Tian appear behind her like a ghost. Jiang Tian, who was dressed in plain clothes, stood proudly like a jade mountain, as if he could support the heavens and earth. You're not afraid of me? Reynolds stopped in his tracks and stared at Jiang Tian as he roared. What are you afraid of? Jiang Tian coldly snorted. You're not afraid of me. Reynolds pounded his chest and roared at the sky. His voice was like thunder, breaking the wind and snow. Do you know that I can't be killed? You should be afraid of me. He became more and more agitated, and his expression became more and more warped. His gaze was extremely ferocious, and it seemed as if it could annihilate the world. With a roar, the sky and earth changed color. Even the aurora became distorted as a large hole was torn open. Rumble. His roar was like a thunderstorm. The people in the distance only felt a sharp pain in their eardrums and a splitting headache. Their eyes rolled back, and they fainted on the ground. Some shamans and oracles even had their spiritual power severely affected, and blood spurted out of their mouths and noses. A mountain several kilometers away was shattered, triggering a huge avalanche that swept up thousands of piles of snow. Although Anfia was very close, She was protected by Jiang Tian's astral winds, so there was no problem at all. Do you think you can't be killed? Do you think you're a true god, the god of Hongmeng? Ridiculous. A hint of disdain flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. You, or should I say, you're actually just a spiritual power in the universe, or an extremely cold distorted force field. So you can make the electromagnetic signals in this area disappear. You're between life and non-life. You're shapeless and can only live in the bodies of humans. You're hard to kill, but I can break everything. Besides, you can't even be called a Dharma law or Tao law. Boom. After Jiang Tian said that, Snow Fiend, who had taken over Reynolds's body, took a step back in fear as if it had seen an evil ghost. Who are you? I've been here for more than 1,000 years, but no one has ever seen through my background. Snow Fiend hissed. You don't deserve to know my name. Jiang Tian sneered. But I want to ask you, how did you come to Earth? This kind of dead planet with no spirit chi can't give birth to such a terrifying energy like yours. I remember a long time ago, I lived on ancient Earth. At that time, the world was full of spirit chi. Many of my people and I could fly, form rivers, move mountains and fill seas. Reynolds was in a daze. Then he said with a face full of fear. But one day it came. It's here and everyone's dead. Gods, immortals, humans, everything died. No one was its match. It could kill gods and immortals. I was also killed by it. Jiang Tian listened quietly. He already had some understanding in his heart. These snow fiends were actually the divine soul fragments of a powerful cultivator on ancient Earth. Yes, Jiang Tian found that there wasn't just one snow fiend here, but at least a few dozen of them. But they were of the same origin, and belonged to the same divine soul fragments. They could split and merge in an instant. Some were strong and some were weak. Because they could merge and split, they could also share the energy they obtained. Every time they devoured a human, their bodies and minds would become a little stronger. Otherwise, they would have disappeared long ago. What Reynolds said was the memory of the owner of these divine soul fragments. Jiang Tian could now infer that the owner of these divine soul fragments was extremely powerful, and had even reached the level of tribulation transcendence. Otherwise, his divine soul fragments wouldn't have existed for so long, and even had some vague memories. What else? Jiang Tian saw that he didn't say anything and asked. I died, but my divine soul saw that the spirit chi on Earth was gradually drying up. Some cultivators flew away in aircraft. Reynolds looked gloomy and said in a hoarse voice. Some divine souls were annihilated, and some were taken away. But I didn't want to go. Where did they go? Why didn't you go with them? Jiang Tian asked. This is my home. My lover is also here. At this time, Reynolds's fingers nimbly made a few gestures. Suddenly, a dim spiritual energy floated out from his fingertips. He carefully held it with both hands, as if he was holding a delicate flower or a tender leaf. It was as precious as a diamond. He said affectionately, she can't withstand the strong wind of space travel. She will be completely annihilated on the way. Ice crystal-like tears flowed out of his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, so I'm here to accompany her. I've been with her for thousands of years, maybe even longer. My memory is also very vague. I've been using my spiritual energy to nourish her every day. I'm getting weaker and weaker. I have no choice but to devour the spiritual energy of humans. Seeing this, Jiang Tian sighed softly and said, she's already dead. This is just the ember of her divine soul. You can't even talk to her. But I feel that she can talk to me every day. Snow Demon smiled foolishly. Forget it. It's too painful for you to live. You've already fallen into the demonic path. Destroy yourself. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a little sorry for him, and tried to persuade him. Perhaps it was the attachment and obsession brought by the ember of his lover's divine soul that allowed him to survive for so long. Otherwise, he would have been annihilated long ago. No. I don't want to die. Snow Demon Renault sacrificed this divine soul into his own body. He suddenly raised his head and laughed sinisterly. Your spiritual energy is very strong. If I devour your spiritual energy, I might be able to live for 10,000 years. You're no match for me. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Do you know that the people you devour also have parents, lovers, attachments, and love? Then let's try it." Snow Demon Renault roared loudly. His murderous intent rose as if a demon god had descended. There was a loud rumble. Fragments of the Snow Demon's divine soul swept over from all directions. Even the one on Tank's body gathered in his body. His figure suddenly grew taller. Crack. Crack. He instantly turned into a 10-meter-tall young man with a rustic appearance and an abnormally tall body. He wore an animal skin coat, revealing his unusually strong muscles. He wore straw sandals on his feet and a feather crown on his head. A necklace made of dragon horns hung around his neck. He held a 10-meter-long bone club in his hand. This was the appearance of the ancestors of ancient Earth. He was filled with a primitive and wild aura. Although he was completely made of ice crystals and snowflakes, his surging blood was forcibly condensed from his appearance when he was alive. Perhaps he had once been a peer of Fushi Shinnon. Perhaps he had seen Hoi shoot down the sun. Perhaps he had seen Gonggong angrily attack Mount Buzhou. There were many unknowns and mysterious auras on him. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. As expected, there might really have been a developed cultivation civilization on ancient Earth. It might have happened more than once. Boom! The snow demon tiger roared. It raised its cudgel and smashed down on Jiang Tian's head. Crack! Before the bone club arrived, the violent pressure had already arrived. Heaven and earth changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. A huge crack 3 to 4 miles long appeared on the ground. In the distance, a glacier more than a few hundred meters tall was directly crushed into powder. Seeing this, Amphia exclaimed. She was of noble status, and had experienced many things. She knew werewolves and shamans and was very knowledgeable. However, she had never seen such a terrifying expert. "You are very powerful, but compared to my strength, you are still too far away." Jiang Tian's eyes were full of contempt as he waved his hand. A giant golden palm that was 7 to 8 meters long swept out with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Clang! The giant golden palm hit Reynolds like a rubber ball. Whoosh! Snow Demon was like a giant rubber ball that flew dozens of meters away. The ice on the ground cracked and caved in, forming a deep pit. Boom! Cracks appeared on the Snow Demon's huge body. Even one of its arms was completely shattered. Dozens of kilometers away from where Jiang Tian was, in a cave on another island. The glacier where the cave was located was carved into the shape of a giant wolf's head. An ice wolf's head. If the overlords of the underground world were here, they would definitely be frightened, because this was the lair of the moon-worshipping wolf tribe, where the wolf ancestor resided. Wolf Ancestor Mountain. The one-armed wolf king Alexander was bowing to an old man with a wild and ferocious aura, who was sitting on a tall mystic ice chair. He said sincerely, "Your Majesty Wolf Ancestor, please take me to the tomb of the treasured sword. Maybe I can be nourished and form a new arm." "Alexander, you are not qualified." The old man was the wolf ancestor. He was skinny and had protruding ribs. His hair had fallen out, and he was very old. However, his eyes were as sharp as blades, ferocious and violent, and there was a kind of overbearing and destructive aura. Chapter 744. You betrayed the werewolves and cooperated with the despicable humans. Humans were once our enemies. No, now humans are our enemies too. The wolf ancestor roared angrily. They hunted us and stole our habitat. But you colluded with them. Get lost. You are expelled from the glorious werewolves. Alexander was forced to take a step back by the violent pressure. The blood in his chest churned and his face changed drastically. It had been decades, but the wolf ancestor's strength seemed to be even stronger than before. He could feel that he wouldn't even last 3 minutes in front of the wolf ancestor before dying a violent death. Behind the wolf ancestor stood a few middle-aged werewolves. These middle-aged werewolves were tall and strong with pure blood. They were strong and powerful and exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Their strength was on par with Alexander's, if not stronger. They were called wolf servants, and were the direct descendants of the wolf ancestor. If they were born, they would shake the world and stir up a storm. Wolf ancestor, I cooperated with the Russian military to preserve your bloodline. Sometimes, we need to compromise. Alexander shook his head helplessly and explained. Let them extract our blood and use our excellent and powerful genes to modify those weak and lowly humans. The wolf ancestor stood up, his eyes filled with arrogance as he shouted angrily. This is not to preserve our bloodline, but to pollute our noble race and make us impure. Go away. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. Boom. As soon as he said that, a dozen wolf servants stepped forward and roared angrily at Alexander. Fine, then I'll go find the secret of the sword vault myself. Seeing this, the Wolf King secretly gritted his teeth, turned around, and walked out of the cave. But all of a sudden he stopped in his tracks. Without turning his head, he warned with a cold expression, Wolf Ancestor, for the continuation of the werewolf's bloodline, please don't become enemies with Kong Tae-chu. Why? You are a member of the werewolves. Why are you speaking for our enemy? The wolf ancestor asked with a trace of anger. Kong Tae-chu is too strong. A trace of bitterness appeared at the corner of Alexander's mouth. He shook his head and sighed. I once wanted to become stronger and take revenge for my severed arm. But when I saw him sweep through the French army and saw the video of him killing a human immortal in Wuxia, I thought that the Wolf clan was no match for him. If you want to challenge him, only death awaits. Haha. Alexander, you've been with humans for too long. You've lost the courage and pride of a wolf. The wolf ancestor laughed and said disdainfully, humans are as weak as ants, not worth mentioning. If it wasn't for the rapid development of their technology and their reliance on firearms, they would have been defeated long ago. This earth would have long been the world of the werewolves. The werewolf raised his chin high and said proudly, you have to know that I was ranked on the power roll 100 years ago. I once competed with the ancestral patriarch of the Hong sect and Hao Taichung of Mount Shu. Kong Tae-chu is no match for me. A sharp glint flashed across his eyes as he said coldly, after the sword vault opens, I must get all the treasures. The next step is to set foot in Sidoni and kill Kong Tae-chu. Sidoni believes in the gods, and I will replace him as the new god of Sidoni. Seeing this, a wry smile appeared on Alexander's face. He shook his head and said, you are digging your own grave. How dare you talk to me like that? Just as the wolf ancestor was about to lose his temper, a series of thunderous roars came into his ears. The wolf ancestor's face darkened as he heard the strange roars. That is the snow demon. He has killed many werewolves. Let's go and have a look. Then, boom. He turned into a giant werewolf and rushed out of the cave. The other werewolves followed closely behind. On the other side of Jiangtian. Arg. You are no match for me. I am an immortal, and humans are just weak ants. The snow demon condensed an arm once more and roared out. Holding the large bone club, it swept up a snow dragon and charged forward. I have already given you a chance. If you keep talking nonsense, I will kill you. Jiangtian scolded. You can't kill me. I am immortal. I am very powerful. You submit to me. The snow demon roared angrily. He swept his club and rolled up thousands of piles of snow as if he could destroy the world. The snow demon knew how powerful Jiangtian was, so he didn't hold back and used all his strength. The force of this strike was so great that it could smash a tank into a metal pancake and capsize a large warship. Submit to you? You think too highly of yourself. Jiangtian was filled with disdain as he threw out a punch. You are just a divine soul fragment. Even at your peak, you are not worthy of carrying my shoes. Boom. There was an earth-shattering sound as a giant golden fist landed on the snow demon's chest like a meteor. Bam! The snow demon exploded. Within a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers, air currents and ice were sent flying. The snow demon's mental strength was attached to the snow and ice. Naturally, it exploded. At that moment, the snow demon's mental strength was torn to pieces. It was greatly depleted and was almost completely annihilated. I can't die. I won't die. I am an almighty. I am a supreme immortal. The snow demon's voice was like the howling of the wind, shaking the void. It sounded distant and close at times, echoing in all directions. It was ethereal, tragic, and terrifying. This time, the snow demon took half a minute to successfully form a body of ice and snow. However, it was obvious that he was very weak. His facial features were distorted and his body was swaying. It was obvious that his mental strength had been weakened by more than half. "One more blow and I will kill you." Jiang Tian sighed and shook his head. Spiritual power originally needed to be stored in the physical body in order to survive. Once it left the body, it would be like a tree without roots. Without nourishment, how could it survive? An ordinary person's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls could only survive for a few breaths after the death of the body. Even if an expert cultivated a primordial spirit, he couldn't leave the body at will, let alone live for more than 1,000 years. It was a kind of obsession. "No. I won't die. I will devour your divine soul and use it as nourishment." The snow demon roared at the sky and attacked Jiang Tian again. The icy fist broke through the air and hit Jiang Tian. In an instant, the temperature dropped to absolute zero. It wanted to freeze Jiang Tian's body to death. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, icicles and ice arrows formed in front of him. They looked like blue gemstones, but they were so sharp that they could easily penetrate alloys. They were aimed at Jiang Tian. Sigh. Jiang Tian sighed and used the gung metal divine body for the first time. Suddenly, he emitted an infinite amount of golden light that illuminated the area within a 1-kilometer radius. At this time, his body seemed to be cast in gold. He was like a golden Buddha that had descended to the mortal world. He was like a peerless god of war who stepped on the eternal sky. Crack. Jiang Tian punched. The snow demon's fist was shattered into countless pieces. Then its entire arm and half of its shoulder were shattered. Arg! Snow demon screamed miserably and staggered backwards. It couldn't feel physical pain, but the weakening and annihilation of its mental strength was very uncomfortable. The next moment, the golden lake in Jiang Tian's forehead rippled. Clang! The golden armor general leaped out and stabbed Snow Demon in the chest with his sharp saber. Smack! At this time, there was a soft sound. The ember of the divine soul of the Snow Demon's lover was shattered and turned into gray smoke. "We are already dead. We can't be resurrected," the remaining divine soul said with the last of its strength. "I haven't been happy all these years. Not at all. Don't be stubborn. Don't make me suffer. Arg! Don't die. Don't go. We have to be together forever." Snow Devil struggled to get up, wailing and howling. It dragged its broken leg and body as it limped and chased after it, waving its hands to grab the gray smoke. Its mental strength was severely weakened. The distortion force field couldn't hold on. Its torso and limbs kept condensing and shattering. But the gray smoke passed through its fingers and didn't stay. It eventually dissipated. There was only a vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth. And nothing was left. Dead. Yes, she's already dead. I'm dead too. I'm just an obsession. The snow demon stood there with its head lowered. It looked at its empty chest and muttered to itself in a hoarse voice. "It's too painful. It's really too painful. For so many years, I couldn't hug her. I couldn't see her. I couldn't even feel my own existence. There's only endless emptiness and loneliness. There's only endless hatred and regret." The snow demon trembled violently. Its mental strength shook violently and was quickly destroyed. Its face became more and more blurry. Its facial features were distorted. Snowflakes and ice crystals fell from its body. "Do you hate me?" Jiang Tian recalled the golden-armored general and shook his head with a sigh. "If not for me, you might not have realized." "No, I don't hate you." The snow demon slowly shook its head. "I shouldn't have existed for so many years. It should have ended long ago. Now it's time for me to go." The next moment, there was a loud bang. The snow demon's body exploded, turning into millions of snowflakes and ice crystals that drifted down. The snowflakes and ice crystals covered an area of several hundred meters. It was as if there was a snowstorm. That obsessive-like mental strength had been completely destroyed. Jiang. Kong Teichu. When Wolf King Alexander rushed to a glacier, he just happened to see the snow demon self-destruct in front of Jiang Tian. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Chapter 745. One had to know that this snow demon was too powerful and terrifying. It had existed for hundreds of years. It had dominated the Northern Isles and killed many experts of the Winter Soldiers and ancestral Wolf Mountain. Even the wolf ancestor had to avoid it. It had fought with it for decades without a way to win. But now it had self-destructed in front of Jiang Tian. Alessandra knew that Jiang Tian was very strong, but he didn't know that Jiang Tian was strong to such an extent. At this time, the wolf ancestor and the werewolves were still a few kilometers away from Jiang Tian, but how could they avoid Jiang Tian's divine sense? Jiang Tian also saw Alessandra, but he was too lazy to pay attention to it. He was just a defeated opponent. If he submitted obediently, that would be it. If he didn't, he would directly smash him into pieces with a single slap. He should be the legendary wolf ancestor. However, the old man behind Alessandra with a walking stick made Jiang Tian's heart skip a beat. This old man had the purest moonwolf bloodline, and had at least 300 years of life. Such a long life, but his chi and blood were still very strong, far surpassing Zeus at his peak. His combat strength was comparable to the human immortal Situ Yuanhao. However, Jiang Tian didn't care. When Jiang Tian killed Situ Yuanhao, he was still at the 7th stage of chi refinement, but now he was at the 8th stage. If he wanted to kill the wolf ancestor, it would be like swatting a fly. At this time, Jiang Tian also noticed that Alessandra and the wolf ancestor were divided into 2 distinct groups, each leading a team. The dozen or so werewolves behind Alessandra seemed to be more modern. They were wearing down and synthetic fiber clothes, wristwatches, and backpacks with cooked food and daily necessities. They seemed to have completely integrated into the secular world. If it weren't for their unusually tall bodies, ordinary people would think that they were ordinary humans. Behind Alessandra, there were 7 or 8 middle-aged men in addition to some werewolves. They were humans, but they all had a solemn aura. They seemed to be either rich or noble, and had an extraordinary background. As for the werewolves behind the wolf ancestor, they were only wearing very primitive animal skins, revealing large parts of their skin, and holding stone clubs and strange knives. Moreover, it could be seen that the animal skins were mostly used to cover the private parts. Most of them were used to cover the crotch area, and not to protect the body from the cold. It seems that there are different groups within the wolf clan, just like the clean clothes faction and the dirty clothes faction of the beggar sect. When Jiang Tian saw this, he clicked his tongue and felt that it was very interesting. "Mr. Jiang, thank you for saving me." And Fia bowed deeply to Jiang Tian with a face full of gratitude. "If it weren't for you, I would have definitely died." At this moment, she was truly filled with gratitude and admiration for Jiang Tian. Deep in her heart, she was also somewhat ashamed. Along the way, she repeatedly doubted Jiang Tian's strength, believing that Jiang Tian was not worthy of being her companion. Compared to people like Xiao En, Anfia felt that Jiang Tian was too inferior. He was cowardly, weak, and incompetent. But reality proved that Xiao En and everyone else were like clowns compared to Jiang Tian. Only in times of danger would a person's nature be revealed. There was no doubt that whether it was courage, ability, or charisma, Xiao En could not even compare to Jiang Tian's finger. Recalling how she had repeatedly looked down on Jiang Tian along the way, and Fia's face was so red that it was about to bleed. Jiang Tian was definitely an expert. His strength far surpassed Connolly's, and could even be compared to the legendary Wolf King. It was just that he kept a low profile, and did not want to show off. Such a man was too tempting. And Fia even felt that even the Russian emperor paled in comparison to Jiang Tian. The Russian emperor liked to show off his masculinity. He rode horses and hunted deer, becoming the idol of all Russian women. However, Fia knew that every time the emperor went out hunting, there would be a large number of helicopters patrolling the sky to protect him. Jiang Tian was too lazy to say anything, so he turned and left. The reason why he had taken action was more because the snow demon would harm people, and not because of Anfia. Jiang Tian did not have a good impression of her. If she had not been careless and underestimated the enemy, so many people would not have died. Of course, those people who died were not good people. If they died, then they died. Jiang Tian did not care. Anfia could feel the obvious distance in Jiang Tian's attitude. However, She was unwilling to give up and hurriedly followed Jiang Tian. On the way, she kept crying out in pain, hoping that Jiang Tian would notice her. It would be even better if he could help her. But unfortunately, Jiang Tian didn't even look at her from start to finish. Anfia could not help but have a bitter expression. She sighed deeply, and a strong sense of regret welled up in her heart. She was full of regret. She knew that Jiang Tian did not treat her as a friend. She knew that she had missed out on Jiang Tian, this godlike man. At this time, Xiao En, Connolly, and the others had woken up. Seeing Jiang Tian and Anfia walking over one after another, Xiao En hurriedly went up to support Anfia. He asked with concern, "Anfia, are you okay? Where are those monsters?" Slap. Anfia swung her hand and gave him a slap. She shouted with disdain, "Xiao En, I've seen you clearly. You're a piece of trash." Xiao En staggered from the slap and almost fell to the ground. He looked at Jiang Tian with resentment and anger. If there was no comparison with Jiang Tian, he would not have appeared so cowardly, and Anfia would not have looked down on him. Connolly and the others were also ashamed. His action of abandoning his employer and running away was despicable. Those monsters were all killed by Mr. Jiang. You don't have to run. Don't be afraid. Anfia said with a cold face. Mr. Jiang is actually so powerful. Suddenly, everyone looked at Jiang Tian with new eyes. They could not believe it. Those two monsters were too powerful. Even laser guns could not kill them. Even Connolly could not do anything to them. However, Jiang Tian had killed them. Then they looked at each other with hesitation. They did not know the habits of the snow fiends. They did not know that Jiang Tian had already killed all the snow fiends. Now they were worried that the snow fiends would appear again. They were hesitant about whether they should build a good relationship with Jiang Tian and let Jiang Tian protect them. However, when they thought about how they looked down on Jiang Tian, they felt a little embarrassed. In the end, the fear of death overwhelmed their pride. Xiaoan said with a fawning face, "Mr. Jiang, I really underestimated you. So you're the best." The next moment he strode over, puffed out his chest and said proudly, "Let's make a deal. If you're willing to protect me along the way, I'm willing to give you $100,000. $100,000 was equivalent to 600,000 to 700,000 renminbi. In 2011, it was still very tempting. "Get lost," Jiang Tian said. "What did you say?" Xiaoan could not believe it, and his face was filled with anger. As the descendant of Alexander, his family was one of the top 10 oligarchs in Russia. Even the mayor of Moscow had to be courteous to him. He had never been scolded so disrespectfully. "I said get lost." Jiang Tian directly swung out a palm, slapping Xiaoan's face. Xiaoan was sent flying 8 meters away. His cheeks were broken and his cheekbones were cracked. Half of his teeth fell out. He lay on the ground and groaned for a long time before he got up. "Mr. Jiang, how dare you hit Xiaoan? Do you know who he is?" One of Xiaoan's companions helped him up, then roared loudly at Jiang Tian. His name was Michael, and he was also the son of an oligarch. His family was in the natural gas industry, and was listed on the Forbes list of the world's richest people. "Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that?" Jiang Tian said sarcastically. "Even if I kill him, what can I do? What can you do if I kill all of you?" "You." Michael couldn't believe it. He was so angry that he laughed. "Kill us? How arrogant of you. If I tell you who he is, you'll be scared to death. Do you think he's just rich? He's the descendant of Wolf King Alexander." "Wolf King? If he comes, he'll have to kneel before me." Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully. "You. How dare you insult my noble and powerful ancestor?" Xiao En pointed angrily at Jiang Tian, his hands trembling in anger. Michael also sneered, his heart full of mockery. "What a reckless fool. Xiao En might not be able to kill you now, but once he leaves the island and reaches the heart of Russia, he can summon a large number of werewolves to kill you." Connolly also shook his head. Jiang Tian had offended Xiao En too thoroughly this time. It was not a wise decision. Right at this moment, rumble, rumble, a snow dragon swept up in the distance as a dozen or so experts rushed over. When Amphia saw the man in the lead, She was dumbfounded and scared out of her wits. This is big trouble. Someone is going to die. The newcomers were Alexander and the Wolf King's clan. When Amphia saw her father behind the Wolf King, she hurriedly ran over and said, "Dad, help me plead. This Wuxia youth saved me before." "Amphia, why did you come to this place? It's too dangerous." Amphia's father, Berezov, was a financial oligarch. From his point of view, he naturally didn't want to offend Alexander because of Jiang Tian. After all, he was the backing of many oligarchs. He looked indifferently at Jiang Tian and shook his head. "Amphia, he beat up Alexander's descendant. If Alexander doesn't kill him, I'll give him some compensation. Dad, if you don't speak now, he'll be killed by Alexander." Amphia pleaded with a sobbing tone. Berezov shook his head, not moved in the slightest. When Xiao-En saw Alexander, he immediately ran over and pointed at Jiang Tian. "Your Excellency, Wolf King, he wanted to kill me and even insulted you. Hurry up and tear him to shreds." As he spoke, he looked at Jiang Tian in a threatening manner, as if Jiang Tian was already a dead man. Caucasian shaman Connolly greets Your Excellency Wolf King. Connolly also bowed deeply to Alexander to express his utmost respect. Apart from the reclusive wolf ancestor and a few other old monsters, Alexander could be considered the #1 expert in Russia. Although Connolly was a shaman compared to Alexander, he was still too far behind. "Kid, are you regretting it now? You actually dared to disrespect the Wolf King. You're dead." After bowing to Alexander, Ken and the other young masters looked at Jiang Tian proudly. Since the Wolf King was here, they had nothing to fear, not even the threat of those monsters. And the arrival of the Wolf King was tantamount to announcing the death of this arrogant Wuxia kid. Chapter 746. Connolly also fanned the flames. "Your Excellency Wolf King, this person is a Wuxia Dharma cultivator. He might have a spatial artifact. Before you kill him, you must force him to hand over that artifact." Everyone thought that the Wolf King was going to kill Jiang Tian. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King's face stiffened. "Bastard! How dare you disrespect Master Kong?" In the next moment, his face was filled with anger. Without saying a word, he directly slapped Xiao-En on the head. Smack! Sean's head was bleeding. He flew more than 10 meters away and rolled on the ground. He was half dead and barely breathing. Then, under Amphia's shocked gaze, Alexander quickly walked up to Jiang Tian and bent his knees. "Put on." He knelt down, lowered his arrogant head, and said with a trembling voice, "My Excellency Wolf King Little Liger." "Little Wolf Alexander greets Your Excellency Jiang Ligua. I wish Grandmaster Jiang Ligua to improve every day and live a long life." As soon as he said that, there was dead silence. Amphia, Connolly, Ken, Berezov, and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes as they stared at the young man in plain clothes, whose sleeves were fluttering in the wind, and whose aura was otherworldly. The Wolf King's status in Russia was too high. Just like Yi Zhantian in Wuxia, he could talk to the Russian emperor directly, and talk to the Northern Army commander as equals. In the eyes of Amphia, Michael, and the others, he was like a high and mighty god, awe-inspiring and inviolable. But now, this famous Wolf King actually called himself Little Wolf, and knelt down respectfully in front of Jiang Tian. This was too unbelievable. It was like a legend. In an instant, everyone couldn't come back to their senses. Their faces were full of shock and confusion. They wondered what kind of background this Wuxia young man had to be able to make the Wolf King kneel down and submit to him. "It's him." Suddenly, Berezov's expression changed rapidly. He suddenly exclaimed, "Dad, who is he?" Amphia and the others were still confused. The werewolves and oligarchs such as Berezov had already stepped forward and bowed deeply. They said in an unprecedentedly respectful tone, "Greetings, National Hunter Master Kong." Xiao-En suddenly realized something, and his face turned as white as a sheet of paper. He was scared out of his wits, and he knelt down and begged for mercy. Connolly's body trembled, and he shook his head with a wry smile. A trace of despair flashed in his eyes. "I should have known. Among all the Chinese in the world, he's definitely the only one with such a powerful cultivation at such a young age." Seeing that the Wolf King's arm had yet to heal, Jiang Tian could not help but shake his head. It seemed that he still wanted her to help him fix his arm. That's right, Wolf King Alexander was indeed thinking this way. He knew that Jiang Tian's magic power was deep and unfathomable. To be able to restore Zhang Qianlei's youth, he must have a secret method to repair an arm. Since the wolf ancestor wasn't going to help him, he might as well rely on Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian would not accept him for nothing. He had to pay some price to show his loyalty. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiaowen. Is this your son? Along the way, he was disrespectful to me time and time again, trying to harm me. How dare you offend Master Kong? You really don't know what's good for you. Alexander stood up, and without saying a word, he grabbed Xiaowen's head with his large hand. Amidst Xiaowen's shrill screams, he suddenly twisted and directly twisted his head off. Alexander had spread his family in Russia and had many children. Xiaowen should be considered his sixth generation of children, and he had at least hundreds of such children. Killing one was not a pity at all. Moreover, the wolf clan was extremely vicious and cruel to begin with. They could not be judged by common sense. Once there was a child that he was dissatisfied with, the Wolf King had always killed him without mercy. Originally, he was extremely respectful of Jiang Tian, and he had a favor to ask of Jiang Tian. But now, Xiaowen had offended Jiang Tian. This infuriated the Wolf King to the extreme, but also to the extreme of fear. With Jiang Tian's current strength, he might be able to defeat Master Kong, who was known as the Hunter of Nations, and hunt down France. Even the sect leader of Huaxia's ancient Wudong sect, Chen Anping, and the leader of the Chinese Hong sect, Sita Yuanhao, were killed by him. Now Jiang Tian could defeat a mortal deity with 1 foot, and he was known as Earth Immortal Jiang. How could the Wolf King be a match for him? 10 Wolf Kings were not enough to fill the gaps between Jiang Tian's teeth. It could be said that if Jiang Tian wanted to, he could kill all the moon-worshipping wolves in a few breaths. For the Wolf King, as long as he could appease Jiang Tian's thunderous anger, what harm was there in killing 1 or 2 of his children? Xiaowen's bloody head rolled to the ground. My Ken and the others were dumbfounded. They were so scared that they wet their pants. Their legs trembled as if they had seen a demon. This was too terrifying. Xiaowen was the Wolf King's son, and his blood flowed in his veins. But now, the Wolf King had killed him just because of Jiang Tian's words. This showed how much the Wolf King respected Jiang Tian. At this moment, they were filled with regret. The lamb that they thought they could bully at will turned out to be a peerless powerhouse who could suppress the Wolf King. How could they be so blind as to offend such a terrifying existence? In fact, they should have known how powerful Jiang Tian was from the fact that Jiang Tian did not die after jumping off the plane. However, their prejudice against the Chinese made them look down on and offend Jiang Tian again and again. In their eyes, the Chinese were weak and easily bullied. They were as vulnerable as sheep. They had been enemies with Jiang Tian all this time, and finally, they were faced with death. Look, I told you that the Wolf King can't do anything to me even if I kill you. Do you believe me now? Jiang Tian chuckled, glanced at everyone and said leisurely, I told you that I can kill all of you without a problem. Do you believe me now? We believe you. Master Kong, we believe you. Master Kong, please forgive me. I'm willing to be your servant. Connolly, my kin, and the rest were trembling with fear. They kowtowed to Jiang Tian like they were pounding garlic. They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies. Their heads knocked heavily on the ice and rocks, causing them to bleed profusely. Blood flowed down from their heads. Believe me, and I'll kill you all the same. Jiang Tian's expression was cold. He snorted and kicked my kin to death. Your Excellency, this. My kin's father, who was also an oligarch under the Wolf King's protection, cried out in shock and anger. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you too. The Wolf King's cold eyes stared at my kin's father as he scolded coldly. Yes, my kin's father was originally gnashing his teeth, but he was shocked when he saw the Wolf King's determination. In the end, the hatred in his heart turned into a deep sigh. Connolly was shocked when he saw my kin was killed. He turned around and ran, his body turning into a flame. The person who can escape from my hands hasn't been born yet. Die. The corners of Jiang Tian's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. However, he did not attack and only shouted. The next moment, Connolly's body was shattered and his divine soul was annihilated. He turned into a pile of ashes and fell to the ground. On the surface, Connolly was the leader of the Amphia family's guard regiment, but his real identity was not ordinary. He was one of the 5 shamans of an ancient sect in the Caucasus. He was able to control fire, and even transcendent grandmasters had to be careful when he used the hellfire. But at this time in front of Jiang Tian, he didn't even last a second and died a violent death, his body and soul destroyed. When everyone saw this, they felt their hair stand on end, and were filled with fear. Even the Wolf King was shaken and emotionally moved. Master Kang's power seemed to have improved a lot. He was so powerful that he couldn't even fathom how powerful he was. Even if he wanted to kill Connolly, it would take at least 15 minutes. However, he had never thought that Jiang Tian would be able to kill him with the incantation of truth. Jiang Tian didn't want to kill the rest of the people. They were just a bunch of ants. After that, the Wolf King would naturally make them wish they were dead. Even their families would suffer. He is the world-famous Kang Taichu. Berazov finally revealed Jiang Tian's name to his daughter. He is the one who suppressed France and defeated a mortal deity. What? He is Kang Taichu? Amphia's face paled. As the daughter of an oligarch and a former member of the KGB, she had heard of Jiang Tian. After the other young masters and the guards talked for a while, their faces were filled with fear. They were scared out of their wits. Ever since Jiang Tian started to develop overseas, he was like the sun in the sky in the world, especially in the upper-class society. His name shook the world. During the battle with Sidoni, he had defeated the pantheon of gods, Winter Soldier, and Blue Storm, the 3 top organizations in the world. During the Gulf of Tonkin incident, he had forced President Sanchi to step down and the President of the European Union to bow his head. Amphia was extremely regretful at this moment. She had missed the opportunity. If she had treated Jiang Tian courteously and valued him, she could have at least become Jiang Tian's friend. If she had become Jiang Tian's friend, her family would have been invincible in Russia. Even the Wolf King would have to give her face. However, she had missed the opportunity. Master Kang, are you here for the opening of the Sword Catacomb? Wolf King Alexander asked. That's right. Jiang Tian nodded and asked with a frown. You know about the Sword Catacomb too? Master Kang, the reason why the Winter Soldier chose to be stationed in the Severnaya Zemlya was to make it easier to explore the secrets of the Sword Catacomb. The Wolf King said respectfully. For a long time, the gene fusion between werewolves and ordinary humans could not be successfully edited. There was a rejection reaction. When the Sword Catacomb opened last time, we obtained a divine herb inside. After the genetic warrior consumed it, the fusion was successful. It can be said that without the Sword Catacomb, there would be no Winter Soldier. In addition, the Wolf clan obtained some ancient books and magic weapons from it, which made us very powerful. My method of controlling moonlight was actually obtained from the Sword Catacomb. At this point, his face was full of longing. But before this, we had only explored the periphery of the Sword Catacomb, and did not enter the core area. With Master Kang's power, he should be able to enter the core area and gain a lot. Let's go. Jiang Tian was straightforward. His figure was like a dragon as he flew into the distance. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves and quickly followed. People like Berazov and Amphia could only follow from a distance. Their speed was too slow. While flying, the Wolf King suddenly said in a low voice, Master Kang, you have to be careful. This time, the wolf ancestor is also going. That old man just now? Jiang Tian said with a disdainful smile. Chapter 747. Yes. He saw Master Kang just now, but he didn't greet him. He turned around and went toward the sword tomb. Obviously, he wants to monopolize the sword tomb. The Wolf King smiled bitterly. In this world, only Master Kang dared to call the wolf ancestor an old man. Haha, he wants to monopolize the sword tomb? He thinks too highly of himself. Jiang Tian laughed and sped up. If he dares to provoke me, I'll slap him to death. It turned out that Jiang Tian deliberately slowed down in order to observe the snow demon. Now that the snow demon had been destroyed, Jiang Tian's speed soared. In just 2 to 3 hours, he arrived before a mountain range. Jiang Tian was afraid that the Wolf King and the others would fall behind. Otherwise, he would be even faster. 9 glacial peaks rose from the ground. They were dozens of meters high and extremely steep, like sharp swords inserted into the ground. These 9 peaks were also connected by glaciers, forming a valley with a radius of half a kilometer. In the valley, white fog and snowflakes swirled in the air. There were powerful fluctuations of magic power, and there were flashing lights swallowing and spitting out auspicious colors. It contrasted well with the aurora in the sky, looking very attractive. At the entrance of the valley, there was a stone tablet. On it, there were 2 large words written in iron and silver: Sword Tomb. This is a real sharp sword. A sword that is dozens or even hundreds of meters long. And it's a quasi-spiritual weapon. The immortal of 9 swords is really extraordinary. Jiang Tian looked at the 9 peaks and projected his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel shocked and slightly moved. But he didn't expect that when Jiang Tian arrived, Anfia, Berezov, and the others had already arrived. It turned out that after the snow demon died, the strange electromagnetic interference immediately disappeared. Satellite phones, walkie-talkies, and other communication devices could be used. In order to explore the secrets of the Sword Tomb, Berezov and these oligarchs built a modern base on a nearby island with helicopters, snowmobiles, and so on. Now that the communication was smooth, they immediately called a helicopter and arrived first. In fact, they were not the only ones who had arrived. Dozens of Russian grand shamans, and physical awakeners had also arrived. These grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique awakened ones were all extremely powerful. They were as powerful as transcendent grandmasters or Dharma spellmasters. Among them, some of the most outstanding ones could even be said to be half a step into the divine realm, or even the divine realm. When Jiang Tian and the Wolf King arrived, these Russian powerhouses only nodded slightly, not showing much respect. The Wolf King's strength was actually at the deity realm. Many of these experts' cultivation levels were not far from his. In fact, some hidden experts might even be stronger than him. After all, the Wolf King Alexander was only the strongest person in Russia. There were those who were more powerful than him in seclusion. However, Berezov immediately led Anfia and the others to break through the wind and snow and greeted them with a look of despair. Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, the wolf ancestor and his subordinates won't let us in. Don't let anyone else in. Jiang Tian scanned the valley with his immortal will, and saw a few hundred werewolves scattered around the valley. Every single one of them held sharp blades and magic tools in their hands, and they stood ramrod straight like sentinels. They were completely silent and solemn, and their gazes were fierce as they swept the surroundings, seeming as if they would directly annihilate the slightest disagreement. The wolf ancestor sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley with a mighty mace next to him. His eyes were closed and he was motionless. His body was covered in thick snow and he looked like an ice sculpture. There was a line in front of him, and a line of words was written in Chinese, English, and Russian. A line of domineering words. Anyone who crosses this line will die. It was strange. The snow was falling and the wind was howling. However, the heavy snow couldn't cover the words and the wind couldn't blow them away. It seemed that the words contained a certain amount of Dharma power, which made the wind and snow go away. Because of this, the grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique awakened ones didn't dare to take a step forward. The wolf ancestor doesn't only have a strong bloodline and body, but he also has a lot of Dharma power. Seeing this, the Wolf King's face showed a hint of fear and envy. He approached Jiang Tian and reported. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain. What Dharma power? In terms of Dharma power, even if the nine-sword deity was still alive, he wouldn't be a match for Kong Taechu. Even if the nine-sword deity was really from the ruins of immortality, the ruins of immortality was still an extremely remote place in the entire realm of cultivation. How could the people from the ruins of immortality be more powerful than Jiang Tian, who had been cultivating for 10,000 years? Wolf King, the wolf ancestor, is the ancestor. So you should be his son, right? However, Jiang Tian didn't want to talk about this, so he asked, Master Kong, there are many branches of the werewolves. I belong to the moon-worshipping werewolves, and he belongs to the icefield werewolves. There are also the grassland werewolves and the bloodthirsty werewolves. I don't belong to the same clan as him, so I'm not his son, the Wolf King said respectfully. As for the name of the wolf ancestor, it's actually based on strength. Every 60 years, the werewolves of the world will hold a duel, and the most powerful one will be called the wolf ancestor. The wolf ancestor is the most powerful werewolf in the last duel. However, he hates humans and wants the werewolves to rule the world. He calls himself a loner, but the other werewolves don't recognize him. Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of contempt. He sneered and said, Haha, arrogant fool. Even among the thousands of races in the universe, humans were still the most powerful cultivation race, let alone these werewolves. Seeing this, the Wolf King said seriously, But Master Kong, this kid is indeed very powerful. I heard that he had entered Wuxia in the late Qing dynasty, and his strength was enough to crush Chen Omping and the others. He also experienced the Napoleonic Wars. Some even said that he was the key to the Russian Tsar's victory over the stronger Napoleon. He has lived for 300 years. Jiang Tian scanned with his immortal will, and wasn't surprised. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The wolf ancestor was 300 years old? That was too scary. He was not human at all. He was a living fossil. That's right. The Wolf King's face was gloomy. He frowned and said, The wolf ancestor and the direwolves are the native werewolves of Russia. They have been inextricably linked to the Russian Tsar since ancient times. 200 years ago, Napoleon swept across Europe and went on an expedition to Russia. The Russian Tsar at that time was muddle-headed and useless. Napoleon swept his way through and successfully took over Moscow. But after Napoleon took over Moscow, he took the initiative to retreat. On the way back, he suffered from extremely cold weather and was defeated in the end. As far as I know, the key to Russia's victory was the help of the direwolves. Why is this related to the wolf ancestor? Amphia asked curiously. According to the historical records, it was because of a fire in Moscow, which was occupied by France. The French's provisions, cannons, and firearms were all destroyed in the fire. They had no choice but to retreat from Moscow. And when the French retreated, they suffered from extreme cold. The weather was not on their side, so they lost. Don't you think it's strange? The Wolf King smiled. Napoleon's army had already taken over Moscow and set up a temporary government and police. But a superfire broke out in Moscow, and the fire was all in important military areas. And it was only October at that time, but the cold wave came a few months in advance and turned Russia into a world of ice and snow. The Wolf King said solemnly. In fact, the Russian military intelligence had already deciphered it. This was all done by the wolf ancestor and his disciples. They were the ones who set the French's military camp on fire. The wolf ancestor also summoned wind and snow to bring extreme weather, freezing tens of thousands of French soldiers to death. In the Maloyaroslavets region, just a few dozen direwolves slaughtered 100,000 French soldiers. The wolf ancestor alone killed more than 30,000 people. What? One person slaughtered 30,000 soldiers. Everyone was shocked and could not believe it. They looked at the wolf ancestor with shock and fear. They did not expect this skinny and ordinary-looking old man to have such a valiant battle record. At that time, there were already cannons and guns. Although they were not as powerful as the modern army, it was still very scary to be able to kill 30,000 people alone. Besides, that was 200 years ago. The wolf ancestor had been cultivating for so long. How powerful must he be? Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, why don't we just call it a day? At this moment, everyone had the intention of retreating out of fear of difficulties. With the wolf ancestor here, it was truly a case of one man holding back 10,000 men. Anyone who wanted to enter the sword tomb was courting death. Master Kong was very powerful, but he was still not as powerful as this old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. The wolf ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He had been on the power rankings several times 100 years ago, and was on par with Zeus of the older generation. The Wolf King sighed enviously. It was said that although he lost to Hao Taichong, the top swordsman of the late Qing dynasty, he was able to escape unscathed. In Russia, when the Tsar was still alive, the wolf ancestor was on equal footing with the Tsar. Even the commander-in-chief of the military had to be courteous to him. He was much more powerful than I am now. What he said was true. Martial artists, cultivators, superpower users, and other super overlords were related to modern technology, especially military technology. 200 years ago, technology was not so developed. Overlords like the wolf ancestor, who could fight against 10,000 people alone, were like weapons of mass destruction and strategic weapons. They were highly valued by the governments of the major countries, just like humanoid nuclear bombs. But with the rise of technology, the secular governments had a new reliance and didn't want these super overlords to be in power. The status of super overlords was severely weakened. Even the United States and other major countries used to hunt down immortal state warriors all over the world. The moon-worshipping Wolf King and his people, as well as the kindred, were once chased by the modern army like stray dogs. Super overlords like the Palace of Gods and the Winter Army didn't dare to challenge the modern army no matter how powerful they were. Instead, they struggled under the support and control of the modern army, and became their vassals and murderous tools. However, after the October Revolution, the Russian regime collapsed. Many of the wolf ancestor and his people were killed. He didn't want to be loyal to the new regime, so he went to the northern islands and hid in the wolf ancestor mountain. The Wolf King's deep eyes flashed with a hint of vicissitudes. He sighed with a gloomy face. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded. The next moment, he walked lazily toward the entrance of the sword vault and said calmly, "A good dog doesn't block the way. Get out of my way." Chapter 748. The moment these words were spoken, the entire place was dead silent. Everyone was shocked. Many Russian overlords and magnates looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. He's dead meat. How dare he disrespect the wolf ancestor? Doesn't he know who the wolf ancestor is? A Russian grand shaman exclaimed in disbelief. This Wuxia boy must be crazy. A Russian half-step immortal state warrior sneered. Where did he come from? Wuxia. Since when did Wuxia have the right to set foot in the sword tomb? Everyone discussed. Yeah, the wolf ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He must be a mortal deity now. An overlord who had awakened his physique, and was comparable to a transcendent grandmaster, looked at Jiang Tian gloatingly, as if Jiang Tian was about to die. Yeah, when the wolf ancestor helped the Tsar defeat the grandmaster of the Qing dynasty, this young man was still in his liquid state. Someone grunted. Even Berezov and the others were a bit dumbfounded. Crazy. Too crazy. The Master Kong of Wuxia was too arrogant. They thought it was reasonable for Jiang Tian to torture Xiao En and Connolly. After all, Jiang Tian's identity and strength were there. He could defeat the French army and the wolf ancestor, so he was certainly qualified to kill Xiao En and the others. However, the wolf ancestor was much more powerful than the wolf ancestor. He was the most powerful wolf in the world. After all, the wolf ancestor was the most powerful wolf in the world. The wolf ancestor was a reclusive old monster. He had killed tens of thousands of people, and was a veteran expert with a lifespan of 300 years. Even if Jiang Tian caught up with him, he would only be on par with the wolf ancestor. The most rational thing for Jiang Tian to do was to negotiate with him and work with him. However, they had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so arrogant. Wasn't he stirring up trouble? At this moment, even Anfia was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She was a bit disappointed in Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian's charm had suddenly disappeared. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian was in charge of a country and a religion, so he should understand the essence of cooperation and compromise. How could he be as stupid as a brat, and directly make an enemy out of the wolf ancestor? Among the crowd, only Maichen's father was overjoyed. I was helpless when you killed my son. But this time, you have offended the wolf ancestor. He will be furious. You can only die. How dare you? How dare you disrespect the wolf ancestor? Kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Wolf ancestor, the ancestor of all wolves, the strongest of the 10,000 races. His bloodline is noble and his strength is formidable. How dare you act so impudently? You're courting death. As expected, many of the Icefield Wolf tribe members were enraged as they howled and roared at Jiang Tian. Each of them was as powerful as a transcendent grandmaster. Among them, a dozen wolf servants were as powerful as immortal state warriors. Hundreds of wolf servants roared at the same time, creating a sonic boom that sounded like rolling thunder. Boom, boom. The sonic boom was so powerful that it blasted the ground like a cannonball. It stirred up snow and created a huge crater. Immediately, many of the experts around the sword tomb were shaken by the aftershock of the sound wave. The blood in their chests surged, and they almost fell to the ground. Sigh, we shouldn't have come this time. There are so many powerful overlords here. If we go, we will only be cannon fodder. The sonic boom was too much for them to bear. If it hit them directly, they would be smashed into pieces. As for Berezov and the other secular oligarchs and magnates, they were all lying on the ground like lowly insects. After all, the wolf attendants were experts at the Godrank realm. Any one of them could command the Winter Army and become an important weapon of the country. They were on par with Alexander the Wolf King. However, the Icefield Wolf tribe had a cold relationship with the current Russian regime. Therefore, they didn't want to come out. You are indeed Jiang Ligua, Earth Deity Jiang. You are indeed arrogant. The wolf ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes suddenly emitted a green light that was more than 3 meters long. His haggard face was calm as he spoke. This old man knows how powerful you are. You once swept through the French army and crushed many powerful organizations. Your battle achievements are glorious. You are known as Earth Deity Jiang. He was actually speaking fluent Chinese. This was not surprising. Overlords like him had traveled around the world in search of opportunities and resources. They were proficient in all kinds of languages. You are the most talented and the most powerful young man I have ever seen in the past 200 to 300 years. The wolf ancestors' 2 eyes were like 2 green divine lamps that illuminated the ancient times, causing people's hearts to palpitate. He said calmly, "If you continue to remain calm and cultivate bitterly for 100 years, even this old man will have to avoid you when I see you. I won't dare to fight you head-on." At this point he was still admiring and praising. But the next moment, the old man's face became serious and his voice became cold. He said disdainfully, "But you are too arrogant. You don't know how to hide your strength and bide your time. You are too arrogant and have made too many enemies." It turns out that he is Kong Taichu. Yes, it's that Jiang Taichu who suppressed the winter soldiers and beat up the Russian world of powerhouses so badly that it was hard to breathe. Alexander the Wolf King is so shameless. He is Kong Taichu's accomplice. Damn it. At this time, many Russian overlords knew the origin of Jiang Tian, but they were all angry and stood against Jiang Tian. It should be noted that too many werewolves, shamans died at the hands of Jiang Tian in the Battle of Sodom. In that battle, almost half of the Russian overlords died, which was a great loss to the Russian overlords. And the overlords who died in that battle were related to many of the people present, or were friends or relatives. Of course, they hated Jiang Tian very much. If we help the wolf ancestor kill Jiang Taichu now, I think the old man will let us go and let us enter the sword tomb. There were even more wise people who thought of a deeper level. Sensing everyone's hostility, Jiang Tian snorted coldly. Bide my time? What qualifications do you ants have for me to bide my time? Too many enemies? So what if the whole world is my enemy? I have said it before. If the Dark Parliament, the Holy See, the Wolf Clan, the Blood Clan, or the descendants of gods want to provoke me, I will kill them all. Jiang Tian glanced at the crowd and finally his eyes fell on Wolf Ancestor. He said disdainfully, "To tell you the truth, I'm not targeting anyone. It's just that everyone here is trash in my eyes." "Ah, trash. We are trash? I am trash." Wolf Ancestor's green eyes were filled with viciousness and viciousness. He was so angry that he laughed and said arrogantly, "Jiang Taichu, what right do you think you have to spout nonsense in front of me and offend me?" I am the ancestor of the Wolf clan. 200 years ago, I killed 30,000 French soldiers of Napoleon. Even the Russian Tsar had to bow to me when he saw me. I once had a drink with the founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao. I had a sword duel with the most powerful swordsman of the Qing dynasty, Hao Taichong. Even the royal family of your country was afraid of me. You, a mere arrogant brat, a junior. What qualifications do you have to compete with me? What qualifications do you have to speak rudely and call me a dog and trash? The more he talked, the angrier he became. His voice became louder and louder until the last sentence was uttered. The moment his voice fell, a sound wave immediately condensed wind, snow and ice crystals. Like a sharp longsword, it pierced out toward Jiang Tiandong. This ice crystal sword was 20 meters long, sharp and cold. It could easily kill an immortal state warrior. It was as powerful as the snow demon's ice arrow, and was far more powerful than the ice spells of the snow witch Plehanova. A helicopter that was blocking between him and Jiang Tian was directly blasted into pieces, turning into scrap metal and flying away. The ice crystal sword pierced through a few hundred meters, and went straight for Jiang Tian. Wherever it passed, the air was torn apart and the air trembled. The violent Dharma power crushed the glacier. This scene was simply too shocking. This was even more powerful than the mantra of truth. He had reached the level of a mortal deity. Break. Jiang Tian waved his hand. Kaboom. With a bang, the 20-meter-long profound ice sword shattered. The wolf ancestor grunted and his skinny body shook slightly. A hint of fear appeared on his face. He felt that Jiang Tian's mana was very deep, so deep that it was unfathomable. He immediately became vigilant in his heart. You're only a saint, equivalent to the mortal deity of Wuxia. You're on par with Zeus. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain and said, I've told you you're no match for me. You're too weak. Hee Master Kong, if he can't beat you, I'll help you. Suddenly, a strange laugh came from afar. Suddenly, billions of snowflakes floated in the air within a few kilometers, and even the wind stopped. That was an extremely shocking sight. Billions of snowflakes floated in the air like special effects in a movie, which defied the laws of physics. How powerful was his Dharma power and soul energy to be able to control such an astonishing amount of snowflakes? Everyone was frightened and turned their heads to look. They saw an old man wearing a sheepskin coat and holding a wilted plum cane. He kept coughing as he walked over step by step. After he walked over, countless snowflakes seemed to come alive and fell to the ground. The crutch in his hand had withered and cracked. However, the plum blossoms on it bloomed in the cold. They were as red as blood and had a sinister and cold aura. Who is he? What a powerful cultivation. He can control billions of snowflakes without saying a word. I'm afraid he's a mortal deity or a saint. When the experts around the sword tomb saw this old man, they felt a sense of trepidation and uneasiness. Where the plum blossoms pass, nothing grows. Ferocious ghosts dominate and suppress the underworld. I'm wolf ancestor of the semi-hidden Tianshan sect, Li Jiuyo. A hint of fear finally appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. He slowly got up and bowed to the old man to show his highest respect. Chapter 749. Li Jiuyo was the best cultivator of ice spells in the world. He was even more famous than Chen Anping. He had been famous at the end of the Qing dynasty. Although Wolf Ancestor was powerful, he was still inferior to this old man. So he didn't dare to act rashly. You? According to your cultivation system, you reached the peak of the human celestial realm a year ago, and are even more powerful than Wolf Ancestor. But compared with me, you are still too weak. Facing Li Jiuyo, Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and still looked at him disdainfully. Many powerhouses were stunned. Jiang Tian had indeed killed a human celestial before, but this old man was at the peak of the human celestial realm. He was so arrogant that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Haha, Kong Teichu, you are too arrogant. Hearing that, Li Jiuyo laughed wildly. A powerful murderous aura shot up to the sky, and even the clouds in the sky were restrained. His face was gloomy and ferocious. His voice was like the cry of an owl, or the whisper of an underground demon. He said sarcastically, You are just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How can you compare with me? Now that you have seen my peerless power, don't you realize the huge gap between you and me? At this time, everyone nodded in their hearts. The gap between Jiang Tian and Li Jiuyo was not just a gap, but a chasm. An insurmountable chasm. Li Jiuyo had lived for more than 200 years, and could control billions of snowflakes within a radius of 10 miles. His Dharma power was so vast and deep that it was like a vast ocean. Jiang Tian was only in his 20s. No matter how talented he was, it was difficult for him to reach such a cultivation level. Besides, if you think I am the only one who wants to kill you today, you are wrong. Hearing Li Jiuyo's words. Could it be that there are more powerhouses? Everyone was shocked. Up there. Some powerhouses suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky in horror. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, in the depths of the rolling clouds and auroras, many figures jumped down from the clouds. Some of them were not afraid of the height of 1,000 meters, and directly fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Some spread their wings of genuine qi and glided for a while like huge falcons before landing steadily. The most eye-catching one was the Taoist priest in the lead. He directly rode on the clouds and floated over like an immortal. A total of 6 figures landed on the ground. The leader was about 30 years old. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was dressed as a Taoist. He wore a loose robe with large sleeves. He had a handsome temperament. There was a sword embroidered on the chest of his robe. This person cupped his fists, looked around and said with a smile, Diansong sect leader Zhou Zixian greets everyone. Zhou Zixuan, looks like you've broken through the half-step human immortal realm, and the human immortal realm. Congratulations. Li Jiuyo said with a strange laugh. Riding on the clouds, traversing the void. This was also the mark of a human immortal. Many of the Russian experts were also shocked. They looked at each other in dismay, their hearts filled with shock and emotion. Huaxia's cultivation world truly had a deep foundation. 2 human immortals were born in one day. In the world of the world's top experts, Huaxia didn't seem to stand out. They were far less famous than Europe's Holy See, Umbra Parliament, Pantheon, and America's Cosmic Shield and Blue Storm. There didn't seem to be many immortal realm cultivators or human immortals. Now only Jiang Tian and Yi Zhantian were famous. But in just a few minutes, a peak human immortal and a beginner human immortal had appeared. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar and shock the entire world of experts. However, it wasn't strange. Huaxia's civilization had a long history and was shining brightly. When a devastating disaster struck, the Huaxia people didn't run away like the Jews or pray for the mercy of the heavens to give them a Noah's Arkansas. Instead, they worked hard to fight, from the Great 98 flood to the world-shocking earthquake. In order to solve the problem of transportation between the north and the south, hundreds of years ago, the Huaxia people opened up the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, which was equivalent to the length of the United Kingdom. In order to solve the problem of floods and irrigation, the Chinese people built the Dujianjian Dam, which had been in use for more than 2,000 years. In order to resist foreign aggression and protect the civilians, the Chinese people built the Great Wall. If 1 mile was not enough, then 10,000 miles. In terms of time, 5,000 years ago, the Chinese people faced the flood like the ancient Egyptians. 4,000 years ago, they played with bronze like the ancient Babylonians. 3,000 years ago, they thought about philosophy like the ancient Greeks. 2,000 years ago, they went on expeditions like the Romans. 1,000 years ago, they were as rich as the Arabs. 500 years ago, they wandered the ocean like the Spaniards. Now they were competing with the United States. For 5,000 years, the Chinese people had been playing mahjong on the table of the world, while the other countries had changed many rounds. The core of the spirit of Chinese civilization was that man can conquer nature, and the courage to transform oneself in nature. The understanding of nature also took into account the oneness of man and nature, and was good at using nature and external forces. This was actually related to the essence of cultivation, going against nature, and following nature. Therefore, the cultivation civilization of Huaxia had also become a bright pearl in human history. It could be said that on a global scale, Wuxia cultivators were a force that could not be ignored. However, many Wuxia cultivators were quiet and didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't know. Zhou Zishuan, you want to be my enemy too? Jiang Tian snorted and raised his eyebrows. In my eyes, you're just an ant. Master Kong, the old man knows that you're very strong, but if you resist stubbornly today, there's no chance of you surviving. Zhou Zishuan shook his head and said regretfully, the old man and fellow Daoist Zhang Qianlei were very close back then. They used to sleep together and talk all night. I heard that you're also friends with him, so I don't want to see you die. If you kowtow to the Wolf King and admit your mistakes, I'll intercede on your behalf and let you live. Zhou Zishuan, you guys are too funny, Jiang Tian said disdainfully. The three of you are still too far away from the sage immortals. Are there any earth immortals? I'll kill a few of them. As soon as these words came out, everyone went crazy. They couldn't believe it and thought that Jiang Tian had gone crazy. An earth immortal. His strength was equivalent to the Sage King of the West. That was a peerless powerhouse with a lifespan of more than 300 years. They could destroy a city with a sword and shake a mountain with one hand. They could overturn rivers and seas, shatter mountains and rivers, and form rivers. They were almost immortal and comparable to true gods. Even in the Holy See, which had a strong foundation, there were only a few earth immortals and sage kings in the past 1,000 years. Because there were so few earth immortals and sages, they were almost legendary and mythical, so they were also called legends. But Jiang Tian was shouting that a few earth immortals would be killed by him. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Hearing this, Zhou Zishuan was so angry that he laughed at Jiang Tian. He simply didn't want to bother. Okay, that's the old man's fault. But today, there might be a few earth immortals for you to kill. Kong Teichu, you're so arrogant. You even want to kill an earth immortal. No wonder you even dared to kill my sister, Hao Hongmei. At this moment, a dazzling red light pierced through the void and came across. The sword radiance was dazzling and the red light filled the sky. It was like a long rainbow, suppressing the colorful auroras in the sky. Clang! A huge mountain more than 600 meters high was directly pierced through by the red light and exploded. Instantly, waves of snow surged into the sky, and rocks flew into the air. After shooting hundreds of meters, they smashed into the ground, causing another earthquake. Oh my God! Who is so powerful? This attack is as powerful as a missile. All the powerhouses present were scared out of their wits and couldn't believe it. As soon as this powerhouse appeared, his sword qi pierced through the sky and destroyed the mountains. It was so overbearing and fierce that it was much more powerful than Zhou Zishuan and Li Jiuyo. He is definitely at the peak of the human immortal, or half a step to earth immortal. Some Russian powerhouses even screamed and crawled on the ground, trembling. This kind of destructive power was beyond the reach of human beings. It was too powerful and destructive, just like the ancient deities. In front of this destructive power, even the wolf ancestor's pupils contracted and he shouted in surprise, "Is it him?" Yes, it's Hao Taichong, the top swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty, the sword cultivator of Mount Shu and the sect leader of Mount Amei. Zhou Zishuan bowed respectfully to the distance. This old guy is so hot-tempered. Every time he appears, he will make a big scene. Li Jiuyo's face was full of jealousy and he snorted. But look at this situation. This old guy didn't cultivate in seclusion for decades in vain. He has already become a blood divine sword, and is half a step to earth immortal. At this time, the Wolf King's heart skipped a beat and his face changed color. After Hao Taichong's arrival, the Wolf King didn't have much confidence in Jiang Tian. Yes, Jiang Tian had killed Situ Yuanhao, a human immortal. But Situ Yuanhao had just reached the human immortal level, and was only half a step away. Many people guessed that Jiang Tian's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the human immortal, which meant that there was a big gap between him and a half step to earth immortal. No matter how powerful Jiang Tian's cultivation art was, it was difficult to make up for the gap in cultivation with cultivation art. Is this person also coming for Mr. Jiang? Why did Mr. Jiang offend so many powerhouses? I'm afraid Mr. Jiang is in danger this time. Berezov and the other oligarchs hesitated and wondered if they should leave Jiang Tian's side. They used to be the Wolf King's subordinates, but now they all felt that it was irrational for the Wolf King to side with Jiang Tian. How Taichung's sword could break mountains and shake mountains. The strength he had displayed was too terrifying and powerful. But when faced with this kind of majestic power, people would feel very weak, helpless and uneasy, and their hearts would be filled with fear. The red light spread out and finally converged, turning into 3 silhouettes. 2 young people, a man and a woman, had an ethereal temperament. They were like immortals who walked on snow without leaving a trace. They clustered around an old man. Not to mention the old man, just the 2 young people were outstanding and outstanding. They were also powerful and profound, making many powerhouses present feel ashamed of their inferiority. This man and woman were Bai Diqing and Song Shuangyan. They came hand in hand like a couple. Jiang Tian, I didn't expect that I would become a disciple of a Mei sect and become the pro-disciple of sect leader Hao, right? You're dead today. Song Shuangyan's jade-white chin was slightly raised. Her eyes were cold and disdainful, like a god overlooking an ant. Chapter 750. She knew how powerful Jiang Tian was. After all, Jiang Tian's battle record was there. She was not a fool. But in her opinion, compared to her master, Jiang Tian was still far too weak. Who was Hao Taichung? The Amei Sword Sect's headmaster. The Amei Sword Sect was the second in the world among the semi-hidden sections. Their martial arts were pure and vast. Their foundation was deep, their history was deep, and their martial arts were powerful. They were second only to Kunlun. In Song Shuangyan's opinion, even if Jiang Tian had some achievements, he was just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How could he be compared to the headmaster of a famous sect? It was like comparing a street punk and a fighting grandmaster. They were not at the same level. Jiang Tian, you broke my meridians and destroyed my cultivation. But Ancestor Xian has already helped me repair my meridians. Now I can still cultivate. My cultivation has even improved. You didn't expect this, did you? Bai Diqing said proudly. Bai Diqing, you stupid roe deer. Don't you know that Song Shuangyan is a jinx? After Jiang Tian saw the 2 young people, his face was full of ridicule. Lu Lishuan was already jinxed to death by him. You still want to be jinxed by him? Do you think your life is too long? Hearing this, the 2 of them were so angry that they almost exploded on the spot. Jiang Tian's mouth was simply too vicious. With one sentence he scolded the 2 of them. But in the next moment, Jiang Tian was too lazy to pay attention to them. His pupils slightly constricted as he stared at the old man. This old man had a leopard head and round eyes. His face was ferocious. He had a wide mouth and fangs. His murderous intent was very strong. He was ferocious, just like Yin Qixiao in the movies. This old man is Hao Taichung? Sure enough, he is just like his sister Hao Hongmei. He looks like the old man and old woman on the bus. Jiang Tian secretly despised in his heart. Kong Taichu, why don't you fight with me quickly? Or you can just cut your throat to apologize so that I don't have to do it. Hao Taichung's murderous intent was dense. As soon as he came up, he pointed at Jiang Tian and roared loudly. Old man, you're too weak. Jiang Tian smiled lazily and shook his head in disappointment. You're just a half-step earth and immortal. Not enough for me to kill you with just one finger. Earth immortal. You guys are too weak. You don't even have an earth immortal. Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. Hao Taichung cursed. I'm a half-step earth immortal. Killing you is as easy as killing a chicken. He took a step forward and charged towards Jiang Tian. But suddenly, a soft force attacked. And Hao Taichung was firmly blocked, unable to take another step forward. Whose cultivation method is so profound that he is actually an earth immortal? Hao Taichung was startled. Suddenly his brows furrowed. Is he here? He had condensed his blood and stopped his lifespan for many years. He actually came back to life. The founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao, is here to pay respects to Master Kong. Suddenly, a warm voice sounded. A figure appeared in front of Jiang Tian out of thin air. The man was wearing a long green robe. His hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. He looked handsome and dashing. He looked like a scholar from the Qing dynasty who had traveled hundreds of years to come to this world. He did not have the slightest bit of aura, but he gave people a feeling that he was otherworldly and had the demeanor of an immortal. He looked like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. It's the founder of the Hong sect, Situ Xiao. Oh my God! He has come back to life. Hao Taichong, Li Jiuye wolf ancestor, and Zhou Zixuan were all shocked by Situ Xiao's arrival. Greetings, Senior Situ Xiao. They bowed one after another, lowering their arrogant heads, and performing a Taoist salute with reverence on their faces. Situ Xiao's status was too high. He was the founder of the Hong sect, an earth immortal, and the former #1 on the legendary roll. The Hong sect was as powerful as a country. In the history of Wuxia, the Tiandi gang, the Tiandi gang, and the Tiandi gang were all related to the Situ family. The Situ family was involved in all the major events that affected the course of history, and they even played an important role. Almost all of the famous Chinese societies in the world were founded by the disciples of the Hong sect, or their descendants. Even during the founding ceremony, the descendant of Situ Xiao, the leader of the Hong sect, Situ Meitang, stood behind him. The lawyer of the Hong sect in Situ Meitang was none other than the famous Roosevelt. That was how powerful the Hong sect and the Situ family were, and how much influence they had in the world. You flatter me, fellow Taoists. Situ Xiao returned the greetings one by one. He was very modest and considerate. As Situ Xiao approached, Jiang Tian furrowed his brows and said, "You have a lifespan of over 300 years. You are even older than the wolf ancestor. However, you are just an ordinary human being. You don't have a powerful blood qi. Plus, you are just an earth immortal. Your lifespan is at most 200 years. How did you manage to survive?" "Master Kong, I am a dying man. I have been using the blood coagulation art to prolong my life. In fact, there are many other overlords like me who have managed to preserve their lifespan. They just haven't been born yet." Situ Xiao shook his head with a wry smile. Then his eyes widened as he looked at Jiang Tian with a half-smile. "People like Master Kong come from the outer space. They have the potential to become deities and immortals. I am so envious of them." "Hee, old man, you are so mean." Jiang Tian smiled and narrowed his eyes. "Do you want me to fall into the Sea of People's War?" In fact, after hearing Situ Xiao's words, Hao Taichong, Li Jiuye, Zhou Zixuan and the others looked at each other. They were so excited that their hands were shaking. Previously, they had suspected that Jiang Tian's cultivation art was from the ruins of immortality. Otherwise, it would not be so magical. It could make Jiang Tian stand at the top of the world and defeat many immortal cultivators in just a few years. However, they were not sure. After all, the legend of the ruins of immortality was very vague. Many people did not believe it. However, since Situ Xiao said so, this matter was set in stone. At this time, they all had a common enemy. They wanted to capture Jiang Tian together and force him to tell them the cultivation art. "Fellow cultivator Jiang, since you don't deny it, I think my speculation is correct." A trace of excitement flashed across Situ Xiao's face. He stopped talking and used his psychic power to send a voice transmission. "After I was revived, I carefully studied all your information. I suspect that you are either a visitor from outer space or the reincarnation of an old demon immortal. You are definitely not an ordinary human being." "Why?" Jiang Tian asked with a half-smile. "Cultivation can be obtained through external means, whether it is through the accumulation of cultivation resources, the acquisition of ancient cultivation arts, or the forcible inheritance of immortals through the enlightenment method." Situ Xiao's eyes were as bright as torches. He still used his psychic power to send a voice transmission so that only Jiang Tian could hear. But a person's temperament and way of doing things can't. "Oh," Jiang Tian said lightly. "Master Kong even dares to fight against the superpowers of the world. He regards billions of immortals as ants and dust. He uses the superpowers as his chessboard and the common people as his chess pieces." Situ Xiao said decisively. "You have cut off all emotions and hatred. Your temperament is extremely strong. It is as if nothing in the world can move you. How can a young man in his 20s have such a temperament? You must be an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years, and has seen true gods and true immortals. You may even be a higher life form. Then you still dare to challenge me. Jiang Tian looked at Situ Xiao, and was a little surprised. Just based on the fact that Situ Xiao was able to guess his origin, he was far superior to other powerhouses. Master Kong, I am only an Earth Immortal. The lifespan of an Earth Immortal is less than 300 years. If I hadn't stopped my lifespan for a few decades, I would have been a pile of dirt by now. Situ Xiao's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. I became an Earth Immortal 100 years ago. But in the following 30 years, my cultivation didn't improve at all. It was as if there was a layer of invisible but firm imprisonment that suppressed me and prevented me from moving forward. Looking at Jiang Tian, Situ Xiao's eyes gradually became excited. But with Master Kang's arrival, it will be different. Perhaps a battle with Grandmaster Jiang will allow me to attain enlightenment in the Tao during battle, step into the heavenly immortal realm, and ascend. Good. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat, and he said slowly with an appreciative expression, since returning to this world, I have met two people with excellent talents and temperaments. One is you, and the other is Zhang Qianlei. I will give you an opportunity. I can take you as my disciple. It could be said that Situ Xiao's talent was really high. His current cultivation was equivalent to that of a half-step foundation establishment cultivator. It was just that the cultivation method he practiced was too poor. Although his true qi was vigorous and surging, it was still true qi and could not be compared with true essence. However, it was very rare to be able to condense such a cultivation on this dead planet where spiritual qi was exhausted. It required great ambition, great perseverance, and great comprehension. If Situ Xiao entered the world of outer cultivators, his future would be limitless. More importantly, even though he knew that Jiang Tian was from outer space, Situ Xiao still had the desire to fight. To put it bluntly, in Situ Xiao's eyes, Jiang Tian was an alien. He was another kind of high-level life form whose power was unpredictable and full of unknowns. But Situ Xiao still wanted to fight. At this time, Situ Xiao showed an indomitable spirit and courage. His obsession to become stronger was what a cultivator needed the most, and also the most important thing. Therefore, Jiang Tian cherished talent and bestowed him with a stroke of good fortune. Jiang Tian's words were spoken directly. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Jiang Tian was too crazy. He was seriously crazy. Situ Xiao was a real Earth Immortal, which was equivalent to the Sage King in the West. But Jiang Tian wanted to take him as his disciple. Just how condescending was this, looking down on the heroes of the world? He was almost ignorant. It was because he was ignorant that he was fearless. Taking an Earth Immortal as his disciple. Could it be that his cultivation was at the level of Heaven Immortal? This was something that had never happened before in history. Master Kong, don't be rash. You are absolutely no match for Wolf King, let alone an Earth Immortal. Quit while you're ahead and apologize. Anfia hurriedly persuaded him. She had a relationship with Jiang Tian. Her life was saved by Jiang Tian. She admired Jiang Tian very much and really didn't want Jiang Tian to court his own death. Master Kong, do you know what you are doing? Berezov and the others were anxious. Berezov was very disappointed in Jiang Tian. He had wanted to mediate for Jiang Tian for the sake of his daughter. But after Jiang Tian said this, even a deity couldn't save him. You have some ability, but he is a human immortal and an Earth Immortal. He is like a deity, not an ordinary human. Chapter 751. Yes. Apologize. Otherwise, we'll make sure you die a horrible death. Song Shuangyan and the others from Beidasheng also shouted angrily. Apologize? Who in this world deserves my apology? Jiang Tian frowned and looked indifferent. He didn't even look at Anfia and the others. This made Anfia feel ashamed, angry and resentful. How dare he ignore me? You're about to die and you still ignore me. Your Excellency Wolf King, this Master Kong is too good at causing trouble. You have to make a wise choice. Seeing that Jiang Tian couldn't be persuaded, Berezov and the other magnates said, "You don't know Master Kang's ability. I swear to follow Master Kang until death." Wolf King smiled coldly, but in fact Alisanda was putting up a strong front. Because he had no other choice. He had already shown his allegiance to Jiang Tian. Even if he returned to the wolf ancestor's side, the wolf ancestor wouldn't let him go. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well fight to the end. Maybe he would still have a chance to live. "From now on, our family will have nothing to do with your Excellency Wolf King and Master Kang." At this moment, Berezov and the other magnates had chosen to stand against Jiang Tian without any hesitation. A gentleman wouldn't stand under a collapsing wall. With the earth-level deities and a group of human-level deities, Jiang Tian would definitely die this time. They didn't want to be implicated. And these overlords would definitely deal with Jiang Tian's henchmen. Wolf King followed Jiang Tian, so they had to cut ties with him. I'm trying to persuade you, but you ignored me. You're really stubborn. Just pretend I never knew you." In the end, Amphia snorted angrily and left Jiang Tian's side, standing on the wolf ancestor's side. For a moment, behind Jiang Tian, there was only the Wolf King and a few moon-worshipping wolves. It was as if they had been abandoned by the entire world. "Jiang Tian, look, even your friends have abandoned you. Don't you know the situation you're facing?" Song Shuangyan said with a face full of ridicule. "You really don't know what's good for you. Who do you think Situ Shao is? The ancestral master of the Hong sect is an earth-level deity, a real immortal. How dare you ask him to be your disciple?" He has always been bold and arrogant. Bai Diqing also laughed mockingly. But in reality, they are nothing more than ants in the secular world, frogs at the bottom of a well. How could they know the vastness of the world, the brilliance of the sun and moon, and the vastness of the universe? Take Senior Situ as your disciple? You dare to say that? You're boasting shamelessly. Li Juyo laughed strangely, his face full of ridicule and disdain. A grain of rice dares to compete with the sun and moon. Not to mention being Senior Situ's master, you don't even have the qualifications to fight with Senior Situ. I can kill you with a raise of my hand. Hao Taichung revealed a ferocious look and laughed sinisterly. "Senior Situ, as long as you give the order, I will slap him to death for you." The wolf ancestor also sneered and shook his head. Kang Taichu, you're courting death. How do you know how powerful Senior Situ is? Don't talk about Mr. Situ. I can kill you. Zhou Zishuan shook his head with a bitter smile and sighed regretfully. Kang Taichu was definitely a talented person, but unfortunately, he was too sharp and didn't know the principle that the strong were easy to break. Situ Shao shook his head and ignored the crowd. Instead, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and then he sent a message with his divine sense. "Master Kang, I know you have good intentions. You should be qualified to be my master, but admitting defeat without a fight will greatly disturb my Dao heart. So I must fight. But I want to fight with Master Kang alone, and experience Master Kang's supreme cultivation technique. So, you should understand the grudges between you and them first. I will not interfere." "Very well." Jiang Tian nodded at him, then flicked his sleeves, glanced at the crowd and sneered. "Hao Taichung, didn't you want to slap me to death? Come on. Didn't you all want to kill me? Then I also want to trample on you all, and enjoy the sword vault alone. Then let's fight." "Kang Taichu, you're too arrogant." The wolf ancestor's murderous intent was the strongest. He stood up and pulled out his mace from the snow and roared. "You've offended me time and time again. Today I'll kill you in front of everyone. I'll let you and the entire human race know that the Icefield Wolf clan is inviolable." He approached Jiang Tian, and didn't forget to stare coldly at the wolf ancestor. "Wolf ancestor, after I kill Kang Taichu, I'll settle the score with you and the entire Moon Wolf clan. You betrayed the wolf clan. Kang Taichu, do you have any last words?" The wolf ancestor stood 100 meters away from Jiang Tian, and sneered. "Do you have any last words? Hurry up and say it, because you're going to die soon." Jiang Tian retorted. "Mr. Jiang, you're courting death. You've offended God. Kneel down and surrender, or my family won't let you go." Berezov and the other oligarchs scolded harshly. Mr. Jiang, how dare you disrespect the wolf ancestor? This is a heinous crime. Why don't you apologize? Anphia hurriedly said. This was the best time to show their loyalty to the wolf ancestor. They all wanted to humiliate Jiang Tian to win the favor of the wolf ancestor and avoid being punished. Jiang Taichu, how dare you disrespect a deity? You'll be killed without mercy. Many Russian overlords and the werewolves of the glacier plain shouted. In the eyes of these Russian overlords, the wolf ancestor was the guardian of Russia during the Russian Empire and their biggest backer. He was very respected and was like a god. Kill Kong Taichu and let him die without a burial place. From now on, my family will worship the Icefield Wolf clan. My Ken's father jumped the highest and shouted. The pain of losing his son made him hate Jiang Tian to the core. He had completely betrayed the moon-worshipping Wolf King, so he had to shed all pretense of cordiality. Kong Taichu, who do you think you are talking to? However, the wolf ancestor laughed. His laughter was full of contempt and mockery. I have 300 years of life. I once drank with the Russian Tsar and defeated Napoleon's French expeditionary force. Kneel down and surrender. Blabber, blabber, don't you find it annoying that you're always like this? Jiang Tian mocked in disdain and attacked without holding back. Jiang Tian used a minor divine power he had learned when he reached the 8th level of Qi refinement. He swatted at the wolf ancestor as if he was swatting a fly. As the palm landed, a giant golden palm about 8 meters long appeared and enveloped the wolf ancestor with the weight of Mount Tai. This move, one hand covers the sky, was very magical. Each of the true essence particles was engraved with Tao runes and could easily crush a transcendent grandmaster. The particles formed talisman inscriptions and dharma laws, forming a powerful grand seal. What is this? The wolf ancestor was alarmed when he was enveloped by the divine power. He felt as if thousands of mountains were pressing down on him, and he could not withstand the powerful force. What was even more terrifying was that he made a series of hand seals, and his lips moved rapidly. However, he could not use any of his dharma spells. The spirit chi of heaven and earth in the area was sealed. Break. The wolf ancestor had no choice but to use brute force to break the spell. He raised the mace with both hands and thrust it at the divine power. Lifting the mace was only a small movement, but the wolf ancestor was already exhausted. Blood oozed out from the corner of his mouth. The next second, boom. The mace exploded and the wolf ancestor was forced to kneel on the ground. In a blink, both of his knees cracked and blood gushed out. His head and waist were still bent over as if he was about to fall to the ground. Everyone was shocked by the development. What? The wolf ancestor can't even withstand a slap from him. Anphia exclaimed in disbelief. This. Many of the oligarchs turned pale and their hearts skipped a beat. That scene was too shocking. It was like a legend. He used a secret technique to seal the spirit chi of heaven and earth in that space. It's too terrifying. Zhou Zixuan exclaimed. Even Li Jiuyo and Hao Taichong were slightly moved. Their faces were solemn as they considered how to break the seal. Seals were secrets that were not passed on. Generally, they relied on array formations and needed to be set up in advance. For Jiang Tian to create a seal with a raise of his hand was simply like a legend. It was unbelievable. Under everyone's shocked gazes. You think you're amazing just because you drank with the Russian Tsar? Jiang Tian walked over lazily and slapped the wolf ancestor's face, shattering his cheeks. You think you're amazing just because you have 300 years of lifespan? Smack. Jiang Tian slapped him again. The other side of the wolf ancestor's face was also covered in blood, revealing his broken cheekbones and countless canine teeth. The pitiful wolf ancestor had roamed the Siberian tundra and the Arctic Circle, and had been invincible in Russia for hundreds of years. At this moment, he was like a little rabbit under the foot of a ferocious tiger, and he didn't have the slightest strength to struggle or resist, allowing Jiang Tian to trample and slaughter him. Call the wind and call the snow to kill 30,000 people? Why don't you show me? Jiang Tian slapped him again. Smack. The wolf ancestor's jaw was dislocated. Blood mixed with snot, teeth and mincemeat dripped down. The wolf ancestor was in a sorry state at this time. Who gave you the courage to ask me to kneel down and surrender? Liang Jingru? Jiang Tian raised his leg and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying a few meters away. The wolf ancestor's sternum was caved in and blood was gushing out of his orifices. His lungs and leaves were coming out of his nostrils. He was barely breathing. How is this possible? Berezov and Fia and the other oligarchs of the Russian secular world were stunned. Kang Taichu is so powerful. Many Russian masters were speechless. Their expressions seemed to be frozen, and they became clay sculptures. They had thought that the wolf ancestor could kill Jiang Tian with a snap of his fingers, but Jiang Tian had defeated the wolf ancestor in seconds. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a one-sided beating and violence. Yes, it wasn't a battle between masters of equal strength. The wolf ancestor couldn't fight back at all. Many Russian overlords were shocked, and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Many people were so scared that they couldn't stand still. That was the wolf ancestor. 300 years of life, powerful bloodline and profound dharma power. He killed 30,000 soldiers alone like a real god. Anyone who crosses this line will die. Why don't you kill me? Jiang Tian took a large step forward and crossed the line. He looked at the wolf ancestor with disdain and mocked. Chapter 752. Jiang Tian didn't stop. He arrived in front of wolf ancestor and stepped on his chest. The corner of his mouth curved into a disdainful smile as he glanced at everyone with a cold smile. God? How can a four-legged beast be the god of the Russians? You're all despicable. If he is a god, then everyone, what am I, the one who slays a god, considered? You want to kill me? Jiang Tian looked at Michael's father and sneered. I'm stepping on the wolf ancestor now. Do you still dare? Master Kong, I know I was wrong. Please spare my life. Michael's father knelt on the ground in fear. His heart almost exploded. He was filled with fear and regret. Even the wolf ancestor had been slapped to the ground. How could he have the strength and capital to challenge Jiang Tian? Die. Jiang Tian snorted and didn't do anything. Maichen's father's body exploded, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that scattered to the ground. Master Kong, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I didn't recognize Mount Tai. Seeing this, Berezov and the other Russian oligarchs were all stunned. They knelt on the ground, trembling in fear. They didn't dare to raise their heads. At this moment, they were shocked, terrified, regretful, and wished for nothing more than to slap themselves a few times to vent their hatred. Why were they so shameless? They shouldn't have been so eager to show their loyalty. Even if they were a team, they shouldn't have stood on the wolf ancestor's side. Compared to Jiang Tian, the wolf ancestor was nothing. He was like a tiny ant in front of a prehistoric Tyrannosaurus rex. It could be said that Jiang Tian had this kind of power. As long as he wanted to kill them, no one could stop him. Even the Russian emperor would have to avoid him. And Fia also knelt on the ground, but she was the most regretful, because she actually had the opportunity to follow Jiang Tian. After all, the wolf ancestor had been the middleman, and she had some ties with Jiang Tian. She had brought Jiang Tian on an adventure, and Jiang Tian had saved her life. It was a rare opportunity to face Snow Demon together, but she had forcefully destroyed it. Moreover, she had seen Jiang Tian defeat the Snow Demon with her own eyes. She should be the most aware of Jiang Tian's strength. However, the wolf ancestor was, after all, a terrifying existence in Russian legends. He was like a god, so the knowledge he had created a blind spot and shackled her thinking. It was too late to say anything now. She had missed it. Only the Wolf King Alexander straightened his body, his face full of excitement and exhilaration. It seemed that following Master Kong was a wise choice. Master Kong was too domineering. He was always full of surprises. With the death of the wolf ancestor and the annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf clan, he was now the strongest wolf clan in the entire world. Master Kong, spare my life. My clansmen and I are willing to submit to you and be your dogs and servants. The wolf ancestor finally recovered from its stupor and admitted defeat. This scene left many people dumbfounded. The wolf ancestor, who had once chatted happily with the Russian Tsar, was willing to be this person's lackey. If this spread out, who would believe it? It was like a myth. At this moment, they couldn't help but recall Jiang Tian's words. A good dog doesn't block the way. When Jiang Tian said this, many people thought that Jiang Tian was crazy and didn't know what was good for him. But now, it seemed that Jiang Tian was right. The wolf ancestor actually bowed his head and was willing to be Jiang Tian's lackey. Begging for mercy was the rational choice, but the next moment, the wolf ancestor recklessly threatened. Master Kong, as you can see, I have a lot of clansmen. There are hundreds of Ice Plains wolves here. If you kill me, there are also some wolves wandering around the northern islands. You dare to threaten me? Fine. You have some guts. Jiang Tian laughed out loud. I'll let you see with your own eyes how I kill all your clansmen with one sword strike. The next moment, Jiang Tian flicked his finger a few times. A whirlpool of blood floated out from the wolf ancestor's chest and formed a strange red talisman. Suddenly, hundreds of blood threads shot out in all directions from the talisman. Every single one of the Direfield wolves was connected to each and every one of them. Some of them even shot into the depths of the heavens, and no one knew where they were going. This is bloodline gravitational kill. Seeing this, a trace of fear and despair appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. Something like that. You know what's good for you. This is called the karmic severing curse. Jiang Tian said with a smile as he controlled the hundreds of red threads. The human body was full of mysteries. It was a treasure trove. The development of science and technology was the power that humans used to control and modify the outside world. Cultivation, on the other hand, was to stimulate the potential of the human body and condense all kinds of divine powers. There was a mysterious bloodline connection between humans and their kin, and they influenced each other. Some twins even had a mysterious telepathy that couldn't be explained. It was like quantum entanglement. And Jiang Tian's method was to use the blood connection between relatives to kill. Once the spell was cast, all the clansmen in the world who were related to the wolf ancestor would die. Master Kong, no. The wolf ancestor howled miserably, truly like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, miserable and shrill. Pa. Jiang Tian didn't care. He grabbed the blood talisman with his right hand and pulled it into his chest like a fisherman pulling in a net. Immediately, a few crystal-clear souls were pulled toward him, which vaguely resembled the direwolf tribe. There were at least a few hundred of them. Some of them were very healthy and powerful. They roared and struggled angrily, kicking up snowflakes and breaking the ice. They wanted to break free from the blood threads. Everyone was terrified. The divine souls could affect reality. The masters of these divine souls were immortal state overlords. Some of the divine souls were weak and had been eroded by the wind and snow. They were distorted and blurry as they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. At this time, many wolf servants and the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had fallen to the ground. They were motionless and had become cold corpses. In fact, 303 of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor that were related to the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had died in an instant. How could this be? The wolf ancestor was dumbfounded. His face was filled with despair. A strong sense of regret rushed to the top of his head and hot tears rolled down his cheeks. This was equivalent to the extinction of the entire Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Not a single one of them was left alive. This was an unacceptable defeat for the wolf ancestor. It was also an unbearable pain and regret. Even the 3 rivers and 5 seas couldn't wash away the pain and regret. What bullshit, Sword Tomb. Whoever wants it can have it. I will not stay far away from it. If he could live his life again, he would never have provoked the devil Jiang Tian. Yes. Devil. He killed an entire clan from thousands of miles away without leaving a single one alive. He was simply a demon from hell. Go to hell. Jiang Tian waved his hand. A golden wave of fury surged through the sky, crushing the souls of the werewolves and sending them flying in all directions. This is the true annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Countless Russian overlords trembled. A strong sense of fear gripped their bodies and made it difficult for them to even breathe. Jiang Tian was too terrifying. He used his bloodline as a guide to capture the souls of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. More importantly, he didn't kill ordinary people. The Ice Plains wolf ancestor had a powerful bloodline. Some of them even knew Dharma spells and were comparable to transcendent state warriors, or even immortal state warriors. However, Jiang Tian still killed them as if they were flies. This was so shocking that it made people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. I guess you think there's no point in living anymore. You're too lonely, right? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he kicked the wolf ancestor's chest. Boom. The Wolf King's body exploded in an instant, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that rained down like a rain of flesh. Everyone saw that the wolf ancestor's soul had also been destroyed by Jiang Tian. There was no chance of him being resurrected. The wolf ancestor was dead. Greetings, Master Kong. From now on we'll be Master Kang's servants and won't do anything rash. Many Russian overlords, including the priests, grand magi and those who had awakened their physical bodies, rushed to kneel before Jiang Tian and kowtowed. The wolf ancestor could be said to be Russia's #1 hidden expert, and also the world's #1 expert of the wolf clan. He had reached the level of immortal saint. Now he was killed by Jiang Tian with a raise of his hand. Who would be a match for him? Who would dare to cause trouble? They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies and they trembled. They were afraid that Jiang Tian would kill them if they were too slow. As for the oligarchs like Berezov, there was no need to mention them. In front of such a peerless overlord who had killed the wolf ancestor, their wealth, power and reputation were nothing. Even if the Emperor of Russia was here, Jiang Tian would be able to kill him easily. Deal with the outside first, then deal with the inside. Jiang Tian kicked away a part of the wolf ancestor's body, and then his cold and indifferent gaze descended onto Hao Taichong, Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zixuan and the others. He grinned. Now it's your turn. Jiang Tian, do you think you're qualified to compete with my overlord just because you killed the wolf ancestor? You're courting death. Bai Diqing's expression changed several times. Then he snorted and said arrogantly, do you know that 100 years ago, Master Hao was the most powerful swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty and defeated the wolf ancestor of the north? If you know what's good for you, kneel down and beg for mercy. Kowtow to us 3 times and 9 times and call us your overlord. Then, maybe my overlord will spare your life. Bai Diqing hated Jiang Tian to the bone. He wanted nothing more than to eat Jiang Tian's flesh and skin. Only by grinding his bones and scattering his ashes would he be able to vent his hatred. He was the eldest son of the Bai family, the most powerful martial arts family in Yanjin, and the leader of the Condor team. He was very influential both in Wuxia and in the secular world. He came from a famous family and lived a life of luxury and luxury. He was a powerful young grandmaster, and was in charge of the Condor team. He had unparalleled power and a bright future. He was powerful in the entire Wuxia and even had the potential to replace Yi Zhantian. But all of this was ruined by Jiang Tian. The Bai family was destroyed and Bai Tianlei and Hao Hongmei were killed. The Bai family, a powerful martial arts family, was defeated and removed from Wuxia in one night. His cultivation was destroyed and the Condor team was disbanded. After he was exiled overseas, he lived a precarious life like a stray dog. He only dared to return to his country when Hao Taichong came out of seclusion. How can we spare his life? Today he must die. At most, we can only leave his body intact. Song Shuangyan was beautiful and had an ethereal temperament. However, her voice was cold and vicious. We can't let the entire Jiang family go. Every one of them must die. Let's destroy the Taiching sect and take their dojo and country. We'll turn Sidoni into the dojo of the Amei Sword sect. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.